city. Before we go too far, we got to get the ladies back involved, y'all. Oh, yes, indeed. Ladies to the front, fellas to the back, y'all. Ladies to the front and fellas to the back.
Woo, boy. We had to bring that socket on back. You know what I'm saying? We got to bring that socket back one time because I don't. That kind of dropped off a little abruptly. You know what I mean? Let me get a piece of that right there.
Hold it for the city.
Yeah, right there. Yeah. Hold on, sis. Let me get that.
Really?
There you go.
Really?
Yeah, hey.
Really?
We try to get the music straight, man.
Really? This is sweet music right here.
Before we go too
That's what he called
This
it?
is sweet music.
We got to get the ladies back
Every time I open
involved,
my
y'all.
mouth, sweet music.
Oh, yes,
That's what we
indeed.
Yeah. Sweet music.
You know what? We might have to.
Ladies to the front,
What we was doing the other day, we might have to
lock.
lock that in. You know what I mean?
Ladies
We might have to lock that one in for us.
to the back.
This is sweet music.
Sweet music.
And then point to your mouth when you say it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Don't hate on the queen. Don't hate on the queen. All right. Thank you for tuning in to the GoWin Radio Show right here on GoGo Radio Live, WinDC Radio, all wrapped up on GoWin.media, coming to you live from the shops at Hopkinson. I'm your host, Nico the Go-Goologist, and finally, without no ado, I have to introduce my one and only lovely hostess, Miss Lady.
I need you to stop that. I'm gonna need you to cut that out. Yeah, Rosh, if we gonna do that, then we have to have like all the claps.
I gotta
and
have it
all
all
that. Round of
together.
applause and all that stuff. Hey y'all.
She's in the pocket.
I am. I'm in the pocket with this sweet music about to come right at you.
No doubt about it. But as she came in, so did a gracious friend of mine. She was dealing with what we call the DMV traffic. She's here finally, and I have to really tell her that I appreciate you, through your busy, crazy schedule. And every time I look at you, now I see your kids. It feel
of course.
They are a spitting image of you. That is crazy. How does Rudy feel about that?
I mean, we just want time to. Well, I think Rudy's happy for time to keep moving on.
Okay.
But I need time to stop.
No, I mean,
though.
as far as like he look in his kid's face and sees you.
Well, see, people give me the older one, Maverick, and then they give the daughter to my husband.
Really?
But I think they both look like me.
Yeah, I do too. Sorry about that, Rudy. Keep barbecuing, bro. hey, look, he mean on the grill. I don't eat meat no more, but he's mean on that grill, y'all. So, first and foremost, let me introduce this sister properly. I got to get my words together properly. Yes, indeed. This young lady right here, who's not only an expert writer, her work explores the media, the arts, public policy, and cultural identity. She's an assistant professor at Howard University's doctoral program in communications, culture, and media studies, a columnist for the Huffington Post, and a fellow of Interactivity Foundation, a former staff writer, editor, and media and cultural critic at the Washington Post and The Root. She's the author of Deconstructing Tyrone, GoGo Live, which I also happen to be privileged to be in myself, and her latest release, which just came out this past February, it's called A Mouth is Always Muzzled, 6 Descendants, 5 Continents, and the Art of Resistance. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce to you Miss Natalie Hopkinson. And I don't have no claps for you, so
Hello.
I just do it
Thank you. Thank you so much for that introduction and for having me here today.
No, we appreciate you for sliding through. First and foremost, you have recently became, you about a year in some change?
Year and a half, yeah.
Year and a half as a professor over at Howard University. How has that been?
It's been great. So I went to Howard for undergrad. I graduated in '98. I've lived very close to campus ever since I graduated. So it's a bit of a homecoming for me to be teaching in the PhD program in communication. It's wonderful. The students are wonderful. I'm also teaching a few undergraduate courses as well in magazine writing this semester, and it's great.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So you staying pretty busy over there, huh?
I am. And so, what that's allowed me to do is that I've actually, because I'm back in the academic game again, I've been moving between the academy and journalism back and forth for the last 20 years. And so now that I'm back in the academy, that means more research. So I'm actually working on a project as far for publication, for an academic publication, looking at the the Globe posters.
Matter of fact, remember I said I need you to remind me what that was about, what we were supposed to be talking about?
Yes,
That's it right there.
Well, I can tell you that because actually this Friday I'm going to be in Indianapolis. I will be presenting, one day I'll present on my new book, the other day I'm going to present on my research about the Day Globe poster collection, and so I'm happy to share what I've learned so far.
Are you able to share a little bit, because this is the home of GoWin, and the Globe poster is actually a signature of our culture. It's almost like it is our graffiti.
It is. It is
to hip hop.
Well, and so what was really great about this opportunity, so the company that created the Globe posters is the Globe Printing Company that's based in Baltimore.
That's right.
So it's the Cicero family.
Which closed about 3 years ago?
It closed, I think, in 2010. But
has it been that long?
Yes, because, what happened was that the Johns Hopkins libraries, they took over their archives, so they paid. So when their companies die, they are able to get people to buy them and put them in their archives. So they had thousands of posters that they had in their archives.
John Hopkins does?
Yes, it's all open to the public.
Really?
Yeah. So I think I'm actually the first person to actually go in. I have a research assistant, Taryn Myers, who's been working with me on it. She's a PhD student. So they told us we were the first ones to actually come in to study the collection. But anybody can go in. It's open to everybody, and it must be for people who actually lived through it. I wasn't living in DC in the 80s, but the people who lived through this at the height, it must be quite a trip to go down memory lane to look at some of these photos, look at some of these posters. So of their collection of about 5,000 posters.
That's all?
Yeah, that's all. Something like 1,100 of them are go-go posters. So what it does is you really see how at the end of this company's life, go-go is what gave it life toward the end. So right now, one of the last things I'm doing is we actually got a chance to look into their business records. So we're actually able to see how much money they were making off the go-go industry and compare it to other people who might have advertised through posters.
Right.
And that was a lot. From what I could see right now, it was the majority of their income came from go-go bands, Rare Essence, EU, Chuck Brown. I looked at 1 month, just 1 month in December, and I would estimate that at least 70% of their income came from go, and it was quite a lot that people were spending back then on these posters. So it kind of gives you an idea of, like, for me, not having been here, it helps me imagine what DC looked like with all of these posters everywhere. And
especially this strip. Branch Avenue was a haven for that because you had triples right here.
Quonset.
Yeah, yes, that's right. The Quonset. I mean, it's the club area was heavy on, and plus this is like the line with Southeast and Maryland. So it was real heavy here. And then what was reggae was also big.
Yes,
with
I found those posters too.
Yeah, and they had a heavy contingency with the Globe Poster arena. I wanted to ask you because, well, You was part of the whole Pump Me Up and the disco dance situation.
No, I was
Oh, you
not.
wasn't?
No.
Okay, well, I was privileged. I thought you had some dealings with that, but
No.
I talked to the creative of that, Roger Gassman.
Yes.
And he had purchased a huge collection of the Globe posters, and so and he had told me that, like, you know, he had caught them before they shut down. So, and when I talk about a lot of, he had a humongous collection, which he still has, because, you know, a lot of people didn't come, and because I guess he was just trying to sell them, and you know, different people got different reasons, you know, for what they do. So, but he wasn't able to get rid of a lot of them.
So he was trying to sell them during when they had this exhibit at the Corcoran?
No, after that.
Oh, okay.
After the exhibit.
So he thought he could sell them afterwards, yeah.
Yeah. So, and then the numbers were, you know, a little bit.
Ridiculous.
Yeah. Thank you, Miss Lady.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
The numbers of what were ridiculous?
what he was trying to sell them for.
Oh, how much was he charging for them?
Anywhere from $50 to, I've seen a couple for like $250, and you know the numbers was kind of high.
I seen one for like 500.
Yeah, you saw 500.
Where was he selling them?
He had a spot on 8th Street. He had rented out a little spot. I guess they was, you know, they weren't doing too much in there, and so he used it for, it was like, you know, people came in there and, you know, you could see what was happening. So I went in there and actually I bought a few myself, and he gave me a deal because, you know, I was working with, you know, with the exhibit that was at the Corcoran, and they actually had some of my my tape collection in the Corcoran.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So part of what I want to talk about at this paper, well, because I'm still pulling things together, even though it's on Saturday, I'm giving this presentation, but you know, part of the thing it's a theme that keeps recurring in GoGo, and so even a couple of weeks ago, I was on a panel with Big G, Big Tony, that Ron Moten had organized at the old St. Elizabeth Hospital. Is it called the Rise Center?
Right.
And Genghis was talking about how this pattern that there is with GoGo, where, you know, these new gentrified clubs come in and they over build out their space, and they buy a whole lot of expensive liquor, and they realize that nobody's coming for them. And then he said, what do? They come to us, the superheroes, you know, turn us like the superheroes to come in, clean out all their liquor, you know, and sort of like, so it's the lifespan of the club. But you could see that lifespan happening in so many other things, like the Corcoran Gallery of Art is another example of that, where, okay, Corcoran's literally on its deathbed. The School of Art, it was actually bought by GW. But they're on their deathbed, and what's the last thing that they have is this exhibit with go-go posters, which, from what I could see, they had record attendance at that as well. Right. And you know, so it's sort of the thing, and that's another example. And then the Globe Printing Company itself is another example of that, where they, for years, that company, and I think it even preceded this Cicero, this Italian family that owned it in Baltimore. Globe Printing Company actually was around even before they were around.
80 years.
So they're basically whatever's popular in the city, right? So they're advertising a lot of James Brown shows, popular rock show, whatever's popular music at the time, you know. And then GoGo comes in and just completely takes over that whole market. And so they're making very good money in the 80s, you know, off of the go-go bands. But it's sort of like right before the end. So I'm at the part of my research where I found an article with Mo Shorter, and actually you might be able to know more about this, where they were talking about the crackdown on these Dayglow posters, because, you know, people were, I mean, it sounded like it was out of control, where people weren't taking them down after you're done. Like, after the show is over, nobody wants to see that poster after that. So the city was sort of cracking down on having these posters everywhere tapped up all in the public space. And Mo Shorter is quoted in a Washington Post article saying that in 1995, the Go-Go Alliance had agreed that the go-go bands would stop using the Dayglow posters. So I don't know, is that something you remember?
What I do know is that's not a fact, because all the way through TCB days and UCB and all of them, they were still, and that's what I was going to ask you, because you talking up to the 2000s, 2002. I'm trying to think when I last seen a Globe poster. It had to be maybe as late as 2005. Maybe as late as 2005, they was doing.
They
Globe
said promoters
posters.
could do. I mean, he said that he doesn't have any control over what the promoters do. But
no, I'm just
he
saying.
said the bands had agreed not to have these posters up.
No,
and,
I'm talking about as far as Globe poster making money off the go-go.
Oh yeah.
We were still heavy into it.
Yes.
And those bands were still using Globe posters. Matter of fact, I remember when the Hot Shops was popping right down the street, and or not even down the street, right here. And I mean, the posters were everywhere. Still in the 2000s.
They did, because I went to college and I didn't come home until 2001, and they were and that was in the South, in the Carolinas, and they had them down there.
Yeah, and actually Globe was a national company, so they did support a lot of they did a lot of hip hop work. They did, so you see that, and they had, but actually they were mostly black acts that were that was their primary clientele. Where this business was controlled by this family in Baltimore. But it's interesting. So at the time when I started writing about go-go in like the late 90s, I felt like more of the design work was in the community. So people weren't going all the way to Baltimore. Like, you had people designing flyers, and you had local businesses that did it. Like, so they were using more like computer software and the technology had sort of advanced from where the Globe company was. But, I think that there's a lot of nostalgia, and there's something special about the Globe in their printing process, and so that's kind of some of the things that I'm looking at.
Well, I wanted to touch on what you was talking about. We're going to get into your work in a little bit, but just because you went down that avenue, it just grabbed me real quick, and we talk about this all the time, but we never had the opportunity to do it live over the air. So when these major companies use I should say users, but when they know that the majority or the bulk amount of their money comes from the African American culture. And they don't see fit to not only give credit to that and adhere to it, but they almost poo-poo the fact that, okay, well, we don't really care. We got those Negroes' money, and we'll keep it moving like that. In your research, and not to give away too much of it, because obviously we want to hear the whole thing when when you're finished with it. What have you found far as these, the Globe poster, at least, as far as us talking about that, what have you found about their adherence to our plight?
I mean, I haven't heard much. I mean, so far, I'm sort of at the beginning of this process, and so I don't really know, but there was a documentary that I'm trying to get my hands on. I think it's called Say It Loud, that was done about the Globe Printing Company. And so everything that I've seen, I don't see a lot of, I know where you're going with the question. And I don't know that there's a lot of appreciation or, special give backs, to the community that had supported the Globe Company.
Well, not necessarily be a give back, but I mean, okay, first and foremost, why did Globe go out of business?
They went out of business because the game changed.
For who?
For people who are producing posters. Yeah. There are far more efficient ways to do it than they had woodcut. They have, and actually all of those equipments all the equipment that they had to create the posters. Now the Maryland Art Institute has those now because they paid for them, right? So they're still using them.
So
but there are far more efficient ways to create a poster. If you want a poster, you don't need to go to Baltimore and have them in their elaborate printing presses that they have. You actually don't need that anymore.
So basically, it was not cost efficient to do what they're doing anymore.
Just outdated. I mean,
Yeah, but it's still in demand, and you don't even see it anymore. It's still in demand. You cannot tell me that in this metropolitan, not even just in this metropolitan area, when you see the flyers that are being done, that people still do not only appreciate that, that they still would like to see it.
well, in my personal opinion, like to see it versus, because what I do DTG versus, and that's print to garment, versus someone that would do screen print and vinyl. It's a totally different. I can make a garment in 3 minutes. A screen printer cannot do that. So it goes along with the time. Times have changed. It's just a lot faster to do it. Like for instance, people that do posters now and flyers, they're mostly electronic.
Yeah.
You get them through your phone. So you're less likely to see someone passing out flyers or posting them up because, and the laws allow you to put them up, but by a specific time you have to take them down or they'll take them away, and then that's your money out the door.
Yeah, they say that, but when it's election season, you see those things up for a long time.
But they get in trouble too. If they don't take them down, they get in trouble. So it's more of a hassle. So that's what Mo Shorter said in this article. And I'm actually gonna reach out to Mo to ask him because this was like an article from a few years ago. But but people were like, basically, they were like, nobody wants to go back and take all those things down.
Take all those down because I don't even remember where I put them.
Right.
You know, it's just like if there's an empty pole, light pole, I'm gonna put it there. But now, like the elections, they can afford that. They're backed by millions and millions and millions of dollars. They can afford that. They can afford to get fined, whether it's $500, whether it's $5,000.
Or they have people they could pay to go back and pick it up because that's part of their budget.
That's your zone, and you put those flyers that way.
But think about how people are finding out about Go-Go's now. You get a text.
You get a text.
For the most part.
You join an email list or a text list, and that's it.
You know, it might be on Snapchat. I mean, think so. But there's a lot of sentimental value.
Or Go Radio.
Or Go Radio, of course. Yeah. But I mean, I think that it's a language. I mean, I'm looking at, like, and you have some of the Dayglow posters here in the studio. You know, it's a very specific aesthetic. It's sort of a language. And then in the times that I have done talks at different places about my Go book, which came out in 2012, people have done that. Everybody tries to do their own little version of the Dayglow poster. So people like to even advertise my talks, like some of my prize posters that they use to advertise my talks. They're imitating that style, you know, and so it's kind of part of the Go-Go's visual language is that was created there in Baltimore.
And it's funny because we're talking about the posters, and I brought up an article written this last year, 2017, and there was only like one mention of Go-Go. Like you have your James Brown, and the actual picture that they used was a James Brown picture, and then the other flyer was Lil Benny and the Masters High Coast Sweat in EU. But it was not even like how you're glorifying and saying that, you know, majority in the late 90s, majority of the monies were coming from the Go-Go. It's just thought of.
Well, and it's just, and that's why I just feel like this. So this project, even though, so I'm done with my book. I'm not doing another Go-Go book. But I feel compelled to continue to do this research because it's like they'll pretend like we were never here. And so, you know, when you look at these, there are thousands of these artifacts that suggest otherwise, and also these people's business records definitely suggest otherwise because that was real money that was coming in, and there aren't very many opportunities the whole time that I researched Go-Go. Like there are very few chances where you could get an idea of how much money has been moving around. So this is sort of a rare opportunity within Go-Go too. But we're looking at, so we have a spreadsheet of all of the posters, all 1,000 of them, and we're looking at what venues they were at. So you actually will get a picture of what the scene was during that time, you know. And then the other thing with posters is, you know, this is what academics do. You're looking at, it has a whole long history, like, and it's connected to urban history, right? So posters were always like a mass medium. So they actually came about, like Gutenberg Press, they pressed posters too, in addition to books. And so it was a way to get the word out in urban spaces. So I think that with the Dayglow posters, it's kind of a way to understand how DC, it's another visual cue to show that DC is Chocolate City, you know? So this is like, we have claimed this public space, You know, so whereas at one time where there were a lot of, you know, European immigrants and others that were in the middle of cities, you know, the visual of these Dayglow posters everywhere sort of signifies that somebody else has come into the space, and this is a chocolate city.
Well, I'm glad. That's a great segue. So I tell you what, when we come back from break, we're going to get into gentrification in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, as well as your new work that you just came out with, and we're going to try and touch into GoGo Live.
Okay.
You know, so which is actually, I was explaining to Miss Lady, like, I really want, we never talked about this, but how much love you've been shown since that book came out. And then have you had any detractors as well? So when we come back, we're going to get into that, all right? You tune into the GoWin radio show right here on GoGo Radio Live, Win DC Radio, all wrapped up in GoWin.media, coming to you live from the shops at Iverson. I'm Nico, the GoGoologist, and I'm here with Miss Lady, and we have our lovely professor. I can call you that now, professor.
Yes, you can.
Miss Natalie Hopkinson. And that's going to take a little while getting used to.
Right.
Doctor,
all right.
doctor.
Yes, all right. Keep it locked right here.
Well, yeah, tell me who's ready for this.
Hey man, it's your main man DJ Batman coming to you live from GoGo Radio Live right here each and every Friday 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Tune in and turn up for my rush hour party. Let's get the weekend started together. Y'all ready to party? Y'all know how I get down, man. It's the one and only DJ Batman. You know what I'm saying? It's showtime.
What's up, family? This is Reverend Tony Lee, the pastor of Community of Hope AME Church, lower level of the Iverson Mall, and I want to welcome you and tell you to come and join me, Community of Hope, each and every Sunday morning, 8 a.m., 10 a.m., 12 noon. That's right, 8 a.m., 10 a.m., 12 noon, lower level of the Iverson Mall. We say it every Sunday that we're the Community of Hope, where everybody has a chance, and we don't care who you are, what you've done, who you did it with. Don't care if you did it last night, woke up doing it this morning, but when you get to church, you're in the right place at the right time to become all that God has called you to become. Don't you worry about getting out your best suit. You come as you are, because God loves you just as you are. That's Community of Hope AME Church, lower level of the Iverson Mall. And did I tell you we got that crank? You need to get some further information or to watch us streaming online. www.hiphopenation.com. www.hiphopenation.com. This your man Reverend Tony Lee's in them. All right, I'll holler and I'll see you there.
It's the brand new app. Yeah, check it out. It's the GoGo Radio Live app, so you can listen wherever you're at, on your iPhone, on your Android, on your iPad. It doesn't matter, whatever your mobile device is, you can listen to GoGo Radio Live 24/7, 365 days, and it is free. Absolutely free. Get the app and listen wherever you're at. The GoGo Radio Live.
What's up? It's your boy DK at the Good News Gospel Go-Go Radio Show. Just tune in each and every Monday from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. or Sundays from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. playing those gospel go-go hits and interviewing the most influential people of the DMV. All you got to do is log on to www.gogoradio.live or download the app on your Google Store or your Apple Store, GoGo Radio Live. See you there.
On Crank Hunting with GoGo Craig, I go searching for the freshest crank on the planet. Every Saturday at 8 p.m. Eastern, I bring you 2 hours of the hottest new go-go music, go-go mashups, and bootleg go-go remixes I can find.
Everyone in Jamaica wants to hear more mashup of go-go tunes and other styles of music.
And so do I, but the problem is I'm running out of crank, so I'm looking for a new connect. And that's when it hit me. I do what we do in sound system culture when we need producers to send us music. I'm holding a sound clash.
GoGo Craig is holding a crank clash, where two songs will battle head to head to see who cranks the highest.
So any go-go bands or producers who want to compete in the crank clash?
King April is calling all of the bedroom producer, sound system and go-go bands to email gogocraig@gmail.com.
Remixes of classic go-go songs and mashup of go-go tunes and other styles of music.
A new crank clash every Saturday at 8 p.m. only on GoGo Radio Live.
Are you short on money? Is your computer acting up? Call my main man, Tony Ray. For $50, PC repairs include troubleshoot one computer using all the proper tools. Remove all viruses, spyware, malware, and rootkits on the computer. Repair any operating system issues, including boot issues, blue screens, etc. Apply system tweaks and modifications. Test operating system for proper functionality. Provide you with an estimate cost for hardware repairs or upgrades needed to provide a complete working PC. Call today, Tony Ray, 202-681-0326. Mobile services also available. He will come pick up your computer and drop it off. Most jobs are done within 24 to 48 hours. One more time, call Tony Ray, 202-681-0326.
Welcome back to the GoWin Radio Show right here on GoGo Radio Live. WinDC Radio, all wrapped up in GoWin.media, coming to you live from the shops at Iverson. And we still sitting here with Professor and author, Miss Natalie Hopkinson, and she's here. We have a lot to talk about. But when we first left off, we was talking about her vibe. Me and her, we used to talk a lot about where we saw the gentrification going on and how it started in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. And she has a different point of view than those who are natively from this area. So, Natalie, you know, we used to talk about this when I was down on H Street.
On H Street, we watched it happen in front of us. So 2005, actually when I first connected with Nico was when I was starting my PhD at University of Maryland. And so I was realized I was going to go back to doing more work on go-go. And so we were was it Hip Hop and Go-Go?
Well, no, it was actually Mad T Music Box, but Hip Hop is where we was at on
on H Street.
Right, on H Street.
So I remember I left a little note at Ben's Chili Bowl to try to find Nico because I couldn't find him. Mad T's record shop was closed. That's where we met first.
Right.
And so I left a little note, and then we ended up getting back in contact. And so I ended up spending so much time at that record store on H Street. And so back then there was a big debate over Cluck You Chicken.
Yeah.
And that was a black man that owned that Cluck You Chicken. But the new folks that were coming in were like, they did not want Cluck You Chicken. And I'm like, well, what else y'all got over here? And so that where you're looking down on this chicken place. So they actually had a petition to try to run him out of there. And that was 2005.
Yeah, and they ended up doing so, but he ended up turning that area into a club, which it just recently closed. So
wait, so that was still 1223?
No, 1123.
1123.
1123. Yeah.
What club was that?
H Street. Touche. Well, it ended up being Touche. Yeah, Cluck You used to be that.
I didn't realize that.
That's not closed?
No, Touche is closed. Sure is.
Does he still own the space?
Huh? No, he's not. He's never been the owner of it. The owner.
Leasing.
Right. Yeah. So
I didn't realize that. So it turned into ended up being a go-go spot.
He's getting ready to open up out in Waldorf.
Okay.
Yeah.
Renamed it to something else after that.
Well, no, he hasn't. I can't get into all his other business, but he has no ownership of that spot, and he's not there. Yeah. So I can leave it at that. But yes, like you said, we talked about that some years ago, and when we saw the streetcars coming in.
Oh yeah.
And it's just amazing how the city has made plans long ahead of time, and we're going to talk about that a lot more in detail with our next guest, and because he's obviously not only well adept, but well informed about that situation. But coming from, because a lot of people don't know, you're originally from Canada, correct?
I was born in Canada, yes.
All right. So, what was your perception of that? Because in Canada, things are ran a little bit differently up there.
My daughter keeps begging me to go back. She was like, "It's time. Let's go. Let's go."
I mean, explain the differences of how the American government works compared to a Canadian government.
So I left Canada when I was 10 years old. So I really grew up in the U.S. But Canada. So my brother actually went back to Canada, and we went to go see him. He lives in Vancouver, and he is an accountant specialized in U.S. tax. And I asked him, would you ever come back? Because he did college in the U.S. And he was like, yeah, but there's too many guns down there, you know. That was a couple years ago. So Canada it doesn't have the same history of, there is a history of slavery there. It was not approved by the government. You know, the slave trade was not a huge part of their economy ever. And so they don't have this, it's not the same racial tensions that there are in the U.S.
Well, because a lot of slaves went over there to escape.
That's right. Yep. Yep. So yeah, it's a much different thing. So that's why even coming as a 10-year-old, I am very acutely aware of race, and I think maybe in ways that maybe even people who aren't from here are. I mean, I realize it's part of every single interaction all the time. It's not something that you ever escape here. In Canada, I didn't really know too much about race, and that wasn't a big issue for me and my family, but being here, it has been. So that's why I've always loved DC. You know, coming to DC for Howard as a freshman in '94 was the first time that I had really ever been in this black world before, and it was wonderful. It was like a lightness, you know, that came off, like not having to deal with, you know, all the racism and the mess that you have to deal with as a black person in this country. So that's why it's been very sad to watch it slip away, you know, to watch my chocolate city this is why I came. And I feel like I got chased, you know. It's like I haven't left anywhere. The place has changed around me, right out from under me.
So you came in '94, and so literally within 14 years, you've seen it change. And me and you used to talk numbers. So what would you say the percentage of predominantly African Americans compared to, let's say whites,
Mm-hmm.
you know, are from then to now?
From the time we spoke to now, well, I could say the height of Chocolate City in the 70s was the 70s, when black people were 70% of the population.
Right.
Right now, DC is a little bit less than half.
A little bit less than half?
Black, yes, just a little bit.
So we done fell below the 50%
we
percentile?
have definitely fallen below. And
that's crazy.
But what I always try to remind people is black people are still the largest ethnic group in DC. The largest. There's nobody that's even close. I mean, you have white people who are like, maybe they're like 30%. So it's really still a chocolate city. And so, I mean, and I'm guilty of that too, because the title of my book was The Musical Life and Death of a Chocolate City. And this whole Death of the Chocolate City narrative is it's not that helpful, because we are still there. And it really encourages everybody to act like we're not there. And it's only a matter of time before we'll all be wiped out. And that's, I don't think, accurate. I don't think that's what that's not what a lot of us want anyway.
Of course not, but I mean at the same time, you have those of our race that also welcome a lot of the change, because they see, for them, they feel like that, the race change has invited better circumstances within their neighborhoods and within the city overall, and that we as a people have done nothing but to tear up our own situations, whether it be locally, home-wise, or you know, within the city itself.
Well, so you know, this is where we disagree, because I just don't believe that. I mean, I think that's what
no,
the
I'm
narrative
saying
about
there's some
black
people that
people
invite that.
Well, they invite that, and that to me is not historical. You know, like that's not an analysis that's supported by evidence or history. We have not torn up our communities. We have been segregated and pushed into certain communities. All the concentration of wealth and poverty, like the concentration of poverty, has also coincided with the creation of the Chocolate City. And so it's not, nobody has, like there's a lot of blaming us for situations that we never had any, we didn't have any part in shaping these things. We've never decided what public policy is. We've never had real access to economic access, political access. So it's not. We haven't done anything. There's nothing wrong with us. You know, there's everything wrong with the political policy framework that we have just tried to make our way through.
But to your statement, don't you feel like that is actually the problem because we have never put ourselves in positions to do such things that you just suggested?
You can't put yourself in a position. You're in the position, you know. So like nobody would choose to be the poorest.
Miss Lady.
No, nobody chooses to be the poorest and most marginalized group. Like who would choose that?
Right.
Like nobody's choosing that. This is the hand that you're played, and you just do the best you can with the hand that you have.
Come on, Miss Lady.
Same thing I've been telling Nico, because Nico is the father of. It's us.
I know.
Blame us.
I know.
It's all on us. We do it to ourselves.
No, we do not.
We do not. And I gave him the example of versus like a carryout that's ran by, you know, Chinese people versus if I opened up a carryout. I don't have the same distributors as they have because they deal with they can afford to sell 3 pieces of chicken for $2.95 because they work with their own. Yeah, they work with their own. I can't reach out to their distributors and get that same deal on chicken because when the trucks drop the stuff off, it's all in Chinese caricatures. You can't understand it. You don't know where it's coming from. But our people, we got to go to Safeway. We got to go to Giant. We have to go anyway. I mean, we can go down to the market and things, but we're not going to be able to get that at that discounted rate. Right. And I tell him that all the time. Like, no. We just have to do the work.
No, we do. I think we do have to do the work, but we also can't. I don't think it helps when we try to blame ourselves for the situation that other people put us in. Like I think is, I came into this country as a 10-year-old. I didn't choose to come here. My parents chose to bring me, but I certainly didn't choose all this racism and segregation and all this nonsense that you have to put up with as a black person in this country. So what I don't like, I really. You know, there's a whole strain that, you know, that we have to take how do you take responsibility for slavery and segregation and police racism and, you know, just like, how do you take responsibility for these things that we've never had a chance to ever have any input about? So I think we try to blame ourselves, and it's nice to feel like you have some sort of control. We don't have any control over this. I mean, we can play our position, we can raise our voices, we can do this, but you know, I just don't think it's helpful for us to blame ourselves for being put in this situation when nobody asked for this.
I think there's a little extreme as far as pointing out what I was saying.
No, blaming it's not. Ourselves. Exactly.
No,
because you always look in the mirror.
That's right, and that's exactly right. I want to clarify. When I say that, I mean that we, more so than outside forces, the only thing we have to control is ourselves.
That's right. That's true. Definitely.
Okay? So if we cannot put ourselves in a better position to, one, understand what is going on around us and take our head out the sand and stop saying, while I'm playing video games, while I'm watching the Lakers play, or I'm consumed with outside media elements that are designed to distract us from what's really going on. That is our fault for consuming ourselves with that, when we know that there are things that we can do to better ourselves and put ourselves in a better position, at least to say, okay, this is what's going on. We need to come together in order to have a voice in the situation. Because right now, what we're doing, or what we've done over the last 500 years, I should say over 500 years, because we made a lot of strides, but in the last 100 years, maybe not even 100 years, maybe 60 years, that we've really taken a step back.
Well, I think that's true. Like I agree with you with everything you just said. We do have to take. There are things that we can do as individuals that can help our situation.
And our next guest is going to help us with that.
And playing video games is not one of those things that
right.
or only playing all day is not going to help.
Or talking about irrelevant things that's going to help us.
But and then I would say also the Kerner Commission, they just had a 50th anniversary. They had a study that came out 50 years after the Kerner Commission report that they commissioned after the riots. We're actually doing worse.
Exactly.
We're more segregated. We're less educated. We have less income. We've actually gone backwards since 1968, which is like, how is that even possible?
My point exactly. And you know what? What makes it even worse? Let me get you situated. What makes it even worse, sorry about that break right there, but what makes it even worse is with the inception of the internet, we have more access to knowledge than we ever had in the history of us being on this continent. Yep. And so we've used that access not necessarily to grow us as a whole, because we've had way more knowledge now than we ever had before available to us. We've used that to do self-destructive things. You know, YouTube, act of food on, on Facebook and all these type of things, using the media outlets to us to be self-destructive. But speaking of that, let's segue into your book that A Mouth is Always Muzzled. Obviously, not obviously, but unfortunately, I haven't had the opportunity to read it yet, and I'm looking so forward to it, because when I was reading the bylines in it, that I've really noticed that, first and foremost, I was trying to get in contact with you, was it 2 summers ago? Mm-hmm. And so you were off in South America, is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, I was doing research for this book.
Right. Yeah. So I wish you would have told me, because I'd have been like, because I wanted to know so much stuff, like, because I had been doing some reading at that time. And matter of fact, during that time is actually when I had my accident, and so tell me, what exactly was it like for you to go down there and find so many indigenous people?
Yeah, so Guyana is where my parents are from. So I was born in Canada. My parents are both born in Guyana.
And that was going to be my next question. Is like, what was the interest in going into Guyana itself? So
it's my family. So I still have a lot of family that's there. And I had started doing this project for the Interactivity Foundation on the future of the arts and society. So I was doing these arts discussions with artists, talking to artists. Guyana was one of the places where I did them, because I was doing an extended family visit in 2011, and ended up being the geographic focus of this book of profiles, essays about artists in who are resisting oppression, resisting their situations and different points in history.
What made you go into that direction? Far as obviously you have a revolutionary spirit. I've recognized that from the time when we sat down for, over the past few years. But what made you go in that direction? Far as get the research the different personalities, such as what we have here. God, my eyes are bad. Walter Rodney, which the historian, which I found very, very intriguing, reading about him and in his plight, as far as what he had, what he was up against, and being the savant that he was.
Yeah, so Walter Rodney was actually was a Guyanese historian that was kicked out of several countries for being a revolutionary. This is the 50th anniversary of the riots in Jamaica. He was a lecturer at the University of the West Indies in Kingston when he went to a Black Power conference, and the government, when he got back to Jamaica, the government had banned him. So they sent the plane back to Canada, because that's where the conference was. When that happened, he had a lot of students that followed him. He lectured a lot about Black Power, and he also had built a lot of relationships with the Rasta community, which at that time in '68, Rastas are cute now, but back then they were like the dregs of society, and no professor would ever speak to them. And so but he had a huge constituency with them. And so when they found out that he was banned, they burned the city down basically for 4 days. They rioted in the streets, and there was millions of dollars of property damage. 4 people died. So this is also an anniversary of that. But he also had sort of asked to leave Zimbabwe, where he taught after he left Jamaica. Then he came back to Guyana, and he also was challenging the government in Guyana, and he was assassinated in 1980. So he's sort of like the most dramatic story of all the people. So he's well known for a book called How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. And so he's a sort of an iconic figure.
Yes.
Iconic figure in just in post-colonial, just as a historian.
Which is amazing to me because he's almost like the Guyanan Malcolm X.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, and, the thing was he was
without going through the problems that Malcolm went through as a child.
Yeah, he definitely is part of that, because I think the thing is he started visiting Cuba when he was an undergrad. And so the CIA, everybody had been tracking him since then. And he got his PhD from the University of London, and he really believed that Guyana was going to be the next Cuba. So he thought the revolution was just about to happen. And what I really admire about Walter Rodney was that he believed that the job of the intellectual and the job of professor is not to just stay on the campus. It's to be in the streets. It's to engage with people, go into poor neighborhoods. He hated his other fellow professors. He called them rum sippers, who sit around, sipping rum and in their privileged position. He was all about using his work as a scholar to liberate Black people. And so I think there needs to be more people like that.
Always loved them.
There needs to be more people like that. And so I was very inspired by his example, as a somebody who's also a scholar and also in the ivory tower. I think the work there is important, but I think the work actually that you're doing here, and that Jauhar, who I've been following his work a long time, so I'm anxious to hear what he has to say as well. But I think that's the most important thing. What intellectuals need to be doing is supporting people on the ground who are working, and that's really what I think Walter Rodney's life. That's, I hope, one of the lessons that comes from his life.
So if I could, it was like when we were talking last week, one of the things that happens is when our people uniquely, and this is attached to slavery, but it's not really true, because when I visit Africa in different countries, in different situations, what I realized is that we have a thing that we devalue ourselves. Now, post-slavery in America, we give the credit to Willie Lynch, and we make excuses blaming white people for the way we treat ourselves and our conduct, or the way we treat each other. But my book specifically zeroes in on our behavior, because we spend so much time blaming other people that we don't do the necessary focus, the work that we need to do in ourselves. And so my issue is not with, a lot of people get thrown off by me, but my issue is not with white people. My issue is innately with Black people, and it's a character issue. We're not loyal to anything. We're not committed to anything. And again, this predates slavery. Everything that I saw when I went to Gambia, I could really see people pulling up on ships, loading Black people on ships, and I could really see the Black people sitting there saying, where they going? Like I could see rich Africans devaluing poor Africans, allowing that kind of stuff to take place. And now, hundreds of years later, I get an opportunity to sit in government offices and talk to government officials, local, national, and international, and I watch them do the same thing. People who don't have money, people who don't have information, they relegate them not important. And so the decisions they make, like when you talk about gentrification, we fighting that in D.C. right now. And it's like people like, well, this was going on 20 years ago. This been going on. people say all kinds of stuff to me that's crazy. It's like when Dr. King first said, look, we should support Rosa Parks. Going to the back of the bus is not right. So some Negroes said, well, we've been going to the back of the bus as long as they let us roll. As long as we've been allowed to ride the bus, our position is going to the back. Why he upsetting the people? I mean, white people wasn't saying that. Black people were saying it. You know what I'm saying? And so it don't matter how long it's been going on. When you come up on something that is wrong and your mind registers that it's a problem, to me, you have an obligation to start spending some time to correct it. And a lot of times we just want to go along to get along. We don't want to make nobody mad. And if it means selling our people out.
Well, that's through training, though. You know, and I
who
think
trained? I mean,
yeah.
I mean, if you say it's through training, who trained you? Because
right. Well, we know who trained it.
No, who
trained
did
the thinking?
Who did?
And you say it's
I'm saying
pre-slavery.
I know it happened before slavery. I've gone to Africa on several occasions, and I watch how rich black people in Africa treat poor black people. I watch it all over the world, every place I've gone. I mean, when you go to a beautiful place like Dominican Republic, and you see Haitians in the Dominican Republic, Haiti is connected to Dominican Republic like Prince George's County is connected to D.C. You can ride across the line, right? The black people that are Haitian, the Dominicans are black too, but they think they something different than the Haitians because the Haitians are darker. They treat them totally different. But as black people do this, when my argument in D.C. at the D.C. Council, like everybody's so worried, oh, the council is not black no more. The council is majority white. All the messed up stuff that's been happening to black people during my adult life in this city was happening when it was a black council. Black people was doing this stuff.
Well, I think there's always going to be people. There's always going to be people who are going to try to take advantage and exploit other people. That's part of what human nature is. But that's not something that's innately black people doing. You know, like, yes, there are people who do that, but that's not all black people. That's some. And I don't think that, I think it's fun. It's, I think everybody has their different front to be able to fight on, right? So, maybe some people, like you're having this conversation, this internal, inside the black community conversation about how we can do better, right? But that doesn't mean that there isn't another conversation about white supremacy, about this whole framework that we're sitting here that was created a long time before any of us had were even recognized as a human being.
So are you telling me?
Just a minute. For those who are just tuning in, you're tuned into the GoWin radio show right here on GoGo Radio Live, WinDC Radio, all wrapped up in GoWin.media, coming to you live from the shops at Iverson. We're sitting here with author and professor Miss Natalie Hopkinson, as well as DC activist, my main man Jauhar Abraham. And so if you just coming into this conversation, we were discussing Natalie's book, A Mouth is Always Muzzled. And along with that, we're talking about how would we say it? Just how we treat ourselves, and is it being done in a way? Have we been subjected to this behavior, or is it self-enabled?
So again, for me, when I go to Africa, and I know that the way we got to America or got to the West Indies or the Caribbean is because rich black people allowed poor black people to be taken, and they sold them, right? So, and that was, and these people had control of everything. Now, they're not I don't suggest that they are the capitalists and they've made this money machine that Europeans have made and made that the focal point of the world that Europeans have made it. But what I'm saying is that I watch our people, and I'm specifically talking about black people. I'm not talking about Japanese and Korean and different people, because I watch them.
Which they do the same thing over there.
Well,
I was there.
I watch them.
Japanese treat just like how you was talking about. You said the Haitians and
the Japanese
Dominican Republic.
They the black. They
no, the Japanese would be like the well-to-do blacks, and the Koreans, because they treat the Koreans horribly, horribly.
So, again, you know, for us, I mean, as I've studied, I mean, I've spent the better part of 25 years paying attention to this, like, and I know that and I deal with some of the most racist white people, and they don't even really realize they are, because black people are around them who want things from them, and so they will allow them to treat them any kind of way for the things that they want. And so when you begin to point out their behavior, like just for an example, Paul Schwartzman is a writer, one of the top writers at the Washington Post.
Yeah,
he and I had a...
Who you what?
We had a big falling out over the past couple of days because he called me for some help on some things that he's trying to figure out what's going on in Southeast. But the council member made a statement, a council member White made a statement about the snow or whatever. And so all of them just started acting like that was the biggest atrocity. Like, I can't believe that he would say such a thing about weather control. I mean, white people have made movies about weather control. I mean, it's not a big deal. But he called me and asked me, he said, well, the council member also has these other conspiracy theories that are just, you know, it's just kind of out there to people that he talked to. So I said, like what? He said, well, like, he thinks that the government was complicit in bringing drugs into the black community. So I'm trying to figure, like, well, damn, what planet do you live on, Paul? The council member is not the only person in Ward 8 that think that, man. I'll take you around to any child, anybody in my community. Everybody knows that we don't manufacture guns. We don't have no ships or planes, and we not flying drugs in, you know, to America and specifically bringing them into the black community. Everybody knows that. So and obviously you intelligent, you know what I'm saying? But anyway, me and him was going through this stuff, so he wrote an article, and then at the end of the article, he says some of the stuff that he got from me, and then he said Jauhar Abraham, who a judge ordered to pay over $600,000 back to the government for the Peaceaholics, right? So this was something that happened about 10 years ago, about 8 years ago.
So you try to
make
that your little footnote on.
Yeah, so I said, out of the million things that I've done in this city that you can verify, this is the one thing. And by the way, I never even had a day in court. The judgment came because I was never served, so I didn't go to court. And then when I tried to get into court, they wouldn't allow me in the court.
Well, we're going to touch on that a little bit later.
But my point is, he wanted to carry this narrative to people who read the Washington Post, right? So he wants to understand why people in our community are not trusting of them, right? So I'm not saying that the white supremacy and the racism does not exist, because I know that it does. And I know most of it for them comes out of fear, because they know who we are.
Right.
It's just an investment to keep us asleep so that we never know who we are. I mean, and what the pockets that they're able to control. And so to me, again, and this is the reason that I'm hard on black elected officials, black people who ascend to certain positions that our people begin to trust and believe in, and then they go behind closed doors and make all kind of decisions that really put our people in a bad position. And living in D.C. And growing up in D.C. and a product of D.C. public schools, I got put out of D.C. public schools when I was 8 years old. I was one of the first runs when they wanted to start testing black boys with Ritalin in the early 70s. And my mother refused to allow them to give me Ritalin because of my behavior. They told her she would either come to school with me every day, or I could not attend public schools. Then public schools were run back then by black people. Like, black people put me and a whole bunch of guys that looked like me out of school. Most of us went to the street. Most of us started selling drugs. By the way, this whole argument about gun control and all that stuff don't have nothing to do with black people. because black elected officials don't have the courage to speak on the fact that I've never gone into a gun store and filled out an application to get a gun. And in no city in America do young black people go get guns from a store and filling out an application and going through background checks. Somebody is bringing the guns in our community. So what they're talking about, this big argument about gun control, the focus is not even black people who dying in every city in this country, who being shot every day in urban America. We not even a part of this discussion. That's why white children are having to take this argument on to help us, because we have educated, elected black officials who would never even bring this up. They know that the issue in D.C. is more guns in Southeast than it is computers. Kids have more access to guns than they do computers, right? They won't stand up. The mayor of this city won't stand up and say that our issue is not going into the store, doing a background check. Because since I've become aware of what a gun was and how to use it since I was 13, that's never been our experience. Like in Chicago, do you think young black guys go to the gun store and fill out an application and do a background check?
No, not at all.
So how is this happening?
Well, I mean, it's pretty much along the lines of when you're dealing with the government and they put out an agenda for our elected officials to follow, then like I've always said here on this platform, is the media is a very strong thing, and if we are to allow the media to set the agenda for our household and for our communities, then we're doing our children a disservice. Because we're not allowing them to see the real world. So we have to be more proactive with our own household and stop letting others teach and guide our children, because they, at the end of the day, they're going to set the agenda for everything going forward. Period. So
what you were talking about earlier, so in our community, when we talk about gentrification, in D.C. they have what's called a comp plan, right? And they do that every 20 years. And they sit down and they decide what the city is going to look like, what's going to be happening in the city for the next 20 years. Most of us don't go to those meetings because we're trying to figure out how we're going to keep the lights on, how we're going to keep the cable paid, how we're going to keep, food in the refrigerator. So you don't have the time to be planning about what something's going to look like 20 years from now. I mean, we just not, the way we structured in America, we not built that way. And I'm saying that when I sit in meetings and see people who look like us, who perpetuate and take the information, the education that they have and use it to further injure our people, to me, it's crazy. Like every other race, they get their education, they get their information, like this sister was talking about, and then they should become champions in their community. Like they should, like when you get an opportunity to get an education or get information, you should be happy to come back and empower and uplift your community with that information. Because if we don't do that, who's going to do that for us?
Can I ask a question about the comprehensive plan? So were you able to see it, a copy of it? And
Yeah.
what concerned you about it? What did you see that was of concern?
Well, mostly with the developers. The money that the city have set aside to do new development, what it's going to cost to build these new communities, the people who are currently living in these communities are not going to be able to stay. So the rents, if you don't have jobs, if you don't have work that's, being paid an affordable or living wage, there's no way are you going to be able to afford a $2,000 a month, 1-bedroom or 2-bedroom apartment in Southeast. And 20 years ago, when this plan was being developed, the people who were a part of the planning knew that. because the infrastructure hadn't been put in place so that the current residents who were struggling academically, who lived in poor communities, because Malcolm said this a long time ago. I read it in the autobiography of Malcolm X. Malcolm said that when you live in poor neighborhoods, you get the benefit of going to poor schools. And if you go to poor performing schools, you're going to get a poor education. And if you get a poor education, you're going to get a poor job, a poor paying job, which relegates you to living in a poor community. So again, those of us who know better should be made to do better. Because I'm not a rocket scientist, and I ride past construction projects every day that don't have people who look like me working on them, who live in the community. And they knew that these construction projects were going to be happening 10 years ago. So what do I say to the government now? You might say that these 18 to 24-year-olds are lost right now because they on drugs, they in the street, they beefing and all that. But we got 10 more years of development to go. We got 10 more years of building. So where's the investment for the 8 to 10-year-old who lives in Southeast right now who's not on drugs? So why don't we have them in an academy preparing them so 10 years from now, if they decide they're not going to go to college, that they'll be able to walk right on one of these construction sites and be able to participate and be paid a wage that will allow them to live in the community. So this stuff is done intentionally by black people, and every now and then one of us will show up and begin to fight against what's going on, and then you become the villain. So that's how Marion Barry became the villain, because in the 80s Marion Barry said the government in the District of Columbia need to be more inclusive. Black people need to have higher paying jobs, management positions. Black women should be able to come in. Now what we did was we moved to Prince George's County. Once we started getting those jobs and we started getting paid a little better, we moved out of the city into Prince George's County and bought homes and bought space. And we abandoned our communities as opposed to taking our education, the jobs and the information and building it up. Now, the easy thing to do is to move out to somewhere where it looks nicer and it's pretty and all that kind of stuff. But we find out what the after effect is 20 years later when the communities are depleted, violence is at an all-time high, the school systems are continuing to be terrible, and the best of us have moved out so that we can experience another type of living in Prince George's County. But the money, the value of the money and property in D.C. far exceeds what happens in Prince George's County. In fact, we probably have the same amount of people. Prince George's County, I think, has more people, might have 800,000 people in this county. And Washington, D.C. is about 700,000 people. The budget in D.C. is about $15 billion annually. The budget in Prince George's County is about $4 billion. More people out here, less money. So the value of the dollar in D.C. is far greater. But we don't.
But the experience for the kids is not better at all. So it's like, you know, we might, the city as a whole is gentrifying. The school system is not, because that's really the main frontier. Like these white people are not putting their kids in these schools.
In what
schools? In
DC public
DCPS.
schools.
They will not. They will do it west of the park. They will select a handful of charters that they will there's a secret memo that goes out so that they can all end up at those this say, and I'm not really kidding. Like they really do. Like the way that these schools open, brand new majority, like my daughter was in a charter school. It was the first year we heard about it because we had some friends who were like, you know, on some of these boards and everything. First year they opened, it's 60% white. How does that happen in Washington, D.C.? You have a charter school that's supposed to be a lottery that anybody can apply to, and this school ends up 60% white. So that's what's happened. Is so the DCPS has not benefited from this because it's sort of everything's sort of scattered. So they've invested, instead of building up the neighborhood institutions, they're building up these every year is a new charter they're opening up. Yeah, that's millions of dollars every time you start. It's millions of dollars every time you close down. So there's been a lot of waste. So a lot of and it makes me so sad, the school situation, just is really very upsetting, because if you really want to see how they're going to treat black people, that's how you look.
The education.
Yes.
So
80% black still. The
Then-
public and the public sector, the public DCPS and the charter sector are both still at most 70%.
So
Now,
you know Prince George's County has the worst school system in the state of Maryland. I mean, you do know that
it's one of the worst in the country, but and I know that because my daughter's in it, and I've done the research on it myself. So trust me, I am a victim of the poor school system that's in Prince George's County. But I wanted to ask you, Natalie, back on your book. There's a young lady that's in your book called Kara Walker.
Yes.
And she did some incredible artistic work in regards to what she sees within she's an American artist, and what she sees as a discrimination problem that's in the country. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so I mean, I just sort of building on what we're talking about is the history. We're sort of like a lot of this conversation we're talking about is rooted in history that we don't even talk about, we don't even know. Right. So in 2014, Kara Walker's famous artist, she was commissioned to do an art installation in the Domino Sugar Factory in Brooklyn. So the Domino Sugar Factory had been there since the 1800s. This was a place where they dumped the sugar to be refined, the sugar cane to be refined into pure white sugar. And they were getting ready to tear it down, probably building condos, I believe is the last thing I heard was for condos. So what she did was she created an
Where is
installation.
this again?
This is in Brooklyn.
Brooklyn,
Yep,
that's right.
in Brooklyn, New York.
Where you saying, I didn't mean to cut you off, but what I was reading is where it's also becoming gentrified.
It absolutely is, and it's ironic because this community was a lot of Caribbean people living there too.
Right.
So that's where the sugar comes from. Is the Caribbean,
Right.
Places like Guyana, where my family's from. So she decided to build what they call the sugar sphinx. So 40 tons of sugar. She created this image that of this. Basically, it's of a woman, but she's a sphinx. Right, and so she's the way that she's standing looks like the Sphinx, like from Egypt, but it's a black woman with a headscarf, and it was one of the most amazing things. Hundreds of thousands of people came to see this in Brooklyn. It was free to get in. I took my daughter. We ran into some few things, and she encouraged people. And if you show some of the images from the back, yes. Very curvy. Yes. The Sugar Sphinx she actually based it on hip hop videos, like video vixens. So you see the woman is she's very curvaceous. And as I said in the book, it's the biggest vagina I've ever seen in my life is going to see this thing, 40 feet high in the air. And she encouraged people to post social media under the Kara Walker Domino hashtag, and people just lost their minds. They were fingering the Sugar Sphinx. They were doing all these sexually suggestive things. It was a very demeaning moment. But what it did was sort of brought out this sexual, this history. It brought out this kind of history of what happened on these sugar plantations. And so the big thing with this Sugar Sphinx is that she is both an item of production, right? The slave, the woman, is an item. But she's also the means of production also. So she's producing more workers. So she's the worker and she's producing more workers. So that makes her doubly valuable. And so if you look at how slavery ended, the women were actually, they put that into consideration that they could, they're not just the product, they're also the means to create more products. So I use that scene to kind of go into the history of sugar, which I actually didn't know about in Guyana, and this is where my people are from, and how it uniquely impacted women. So it just opened up this amazing conversation about that history. So Beyonce and Jay-Z were there. Everybody went to see the Sugar Sphinx and pay homage.
It is an incredible piece of art, and that's exactly what it is, art. And so the nature of your book, and for those who are coming in late to this conversation, is a mouth is always muzzled, is speaking on some of our artists, and although that she's not Guyanese.
Yeah.
Thank you. Based. She's American based, but the majority of the ones that I've looked at are Guyanese based.
Yeah.
Why her opposed to the rest
to the other ones?
Right.
So I had no intention. So Kara Walker does not need my help to give her any more. She was a MacArthur genius. She's one of these 1%er artists that were her things sell for a lot. She's in the very elite art world. I ended up including her because it was such a powerful experience, and because it did open up this space around the history of sugar. I didn't know my family's history of sugar. You know, I did not know that Guyana. So it led me to go back and call my grandmother. Like, did you know anybody who worked on a sugar plant? No, because in Guyana, what happened was at the end of slavery, they brought in indentured workers from India. So most of the people who live in Guyana right now who have a connection to sugar are East Indians still. And as soon as the end of slavery, so the British actually ended slavery in 1834, Parliament approved $20 million to pay the planters who lost their property. So
that's a lot of money back then.
Back then, yeah, in 1835, it was a lot of money. And so actually was able to find the Hopkinson plantation. So he got money, he got paid, who likely owned my ancestors as well. So, you know, unlike now DC is unique. So the UK and DC are two places that had compensated end to slavery. So just like I was able to type my name and find out who owned my people who were part of the British Empire, in DC you could do that, because when Lincoln ended slavery in DC, he also compensated owners up to, you know, they got reparations. You know, but the workers themselves got nothing.
That's crazy.
So you can actually go and find, you know, how much, like people's property lists, how much, and, you know, it's actually all digitized online now. It's amazing. We talk about all the information we have now.
That's exactly
it's amazing.
That's exactly what I was getting ready to go into. Is like, that's been my point. You know, like, we have no excuse for saying we don't know. You know, opposed to when I was a child. You know, I mean, where, you know, we had the index card filing system where we had to look for stuff, and now it's at your fingertips.
It's at your fingertips. You can go to DC Public Library website, which is, so we were talking before you came, we were talking about my Globe project. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I'm going on DCPL website. That's free. The archives are free. So I'm pulling up all these old stories from the 80s, you know, about go-go, and all of that it's full. Like anybody could have access to a lot of these things, but it's not that easy. So unless they happen to be listening to go-go radio and GoWin Media, they would not know that maybe they wouldn't have access, or they weren't in my class at Howard. You know, you wouldn't know. You know, so like so much of these things are hidden. But I'm really interested in the DC emancipated slavery as well, because I live in Bloomingdale, and I was able to find Bloomingdale, DC, which is off North Capitol. I was able to find the original inventory list for the people who lived on the Bloomingdale mansion. They had 18 slaves. So whenever I give a tour of Bloomingdale, that's what I start with. I start with this ticket that shows the people, and they're, you know, these human beings that worked in the Bloomingdale, you know, which is another history that's completely hidden. Why don't we talk about that in school? Why don't we talk about that at all? Like a lot of this stuff has to come up. So I really applaud Kara Walker for using that platform for his opportunity to really have these conversations that we really need to have.
Well, I really appreciate that. I'm really looking forward to the book. I'm really looking forward to it. Matter of fact, I might just go buy it outright. Speaking of buying it outright, there's a local bookstore which you're going to be appearing at on April 7th?
April 7th,
right,
yes.
April 7th. And you're going to be speaking with a young lady. Now, you're interviewing her?
Yes. So we're going to have a conversation together about her book. So Naima Koster.
Thank you.
She has.
I didn't know how to pronounce that.
I think it's Naima Koster. She has a book called Halsey Street, and so we're going to be in conversation at the Anacostia Art Center, which is, I think Mahogany Books might be even doing the sales.
And they just opened up recently, so
yeah,
another
exciting.
Yes, indeed.
So they'll have my book there, but the focus of the event is not my book; it's about her book. So her book is actually about gentrification in Bed-Stuy, you know, and story is really interesting because she is her main character. Well, she's also from Bed-Stuy, so her main character is also has ties to the Dominican Republic. So the book is actually set partly in Dominican Republic, and but mostly in Bed-Stuy. And so she's looking at all this gentrification things that we're talking about, and she's looking at how it impacted this family. And her dad, the character of her dad, actually reminds me of you, Nico, because he owns a record store in Bed-Stuy, and he was trying to hold on for a long time, and he ended up getting having to leave his spot in Bed-Stuy. So you see the decline that he has in his health, and just psychologically just feeling displaced by all these new white people coming in.
It's called stress.
Yeah, well, but he had a record store,
Right.
you know, and that was his thing, is he had a record store, and he found that what he was doing, he wasn't just a businessman, he was somebody who, he thought that this was the important part of our community, is to have this space. And so the book kind of unpacks a lot of those things. So if people listening are around on the 7th, I think it'll be a good conversation that we'll have.
No doubt, no doubt. So I definitely want to plug that once again, because I'm gonna reach out to you later on, because I'm trying to reach out to the owners of Mahogany Books and actually have them come in.
That would be good.
I reached out to them earlier before, and you know they had just opened, so they had a lot going on. So hopefully things will settle down, and we can get some black entrepreneurs in here to talk about what it took to open up a bookstore in Southeast Washington D.C.
Yeah.
You know, so I appreciate you coming in. Are you going to be able to hang around? You got to go back to
I
Howard.
actually have to go back.
Okay, so
now.
So if anybody, if you get an opportunity, I mean, we've been talking about this book, but get a chance, go to where's the book available? We know it's got to be on Amazon.
It's definitely on Amazon.
Right.
It's also at Busboys and Poets. I had a event there in conversation with Kojo Nnamdi a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
Kojo is also from Guyana. So
Really?
Yes, so we had a lot to talk about
I'm sure.
as far as in Guyana. And so Politics and Prose has it too. They had me back there.
Okay.
And
they did.
I know. But this time I asked to bring a playlist because, you know, last time I went to Politics and Prose last time with my go-go book, and this white lady turned off my music, and it was a whole situation there.
You told me about it.
Yeah. So this time I was like, my friends were like, "You going back there?" And I was like, "Yeah." They were like, "Well, you need to bring some soca music to see if they've learned anything." So I actually brought a new playlist when I went back. So they definitely have copies of my books there, Busboys, and then definitely need to support Mahogany Books.
No doubt.
So they'll have
No
it. They'll
doubt.
have copies of it there.
No doubt. So and that is A Mouth is Always Muzzled, as well as do they have a Go-Go Live there as well in Mahogany?
I'm not sure if they have it at Mahogany. I think so. I know that Busboys definitely have
Yeah, I
Go-Go
was just about to
Live.
say, because my daughter found it at Busboys and Poets. She said, "Daddy, you know." So
That's
she
the
would
book that you're in. Yes.
Yeah. So
I have a whole chapter on
Nicole
Go-Go
said,
Nico.
"Go, Daddy, go."
Aw.
Yeah. So I said, "You know, Daddy's in that book." No, you're not in that book.
Yes, he is.
Yeah. So she was really amazed.
I would
by
not
it.
have been able to do that book without Nico. So that's why I come anytime that he asks. I'm happy to do whatever he needs me to do.
Please stop.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'll tell you what. So we're getting ready to go to the break real quick. When we come back, we're going to follow up with Jauhar. And Miss Lady has a few questions for Jauhar that she would like for you to answer, sir. So keep it locked right here on GoGo Radio, live, Win DC Radio, all wrapped up in GoWin.media, coming to you live from the shops at Iverson. And you are tuned in to the GoWin Radio Show. And we want to thank, once again, Miss Natalie Hopkinson for coming through. All right?
This is Crank Therapy. Go Radio Live.
Oh yeah. Your boy DJ Chuck Classic, Go Radio Live. Letting you know you can catch me in the mix every Saturday, 2 to 4 p.m. It's Crank Therapy. Oh yeah. And I hit you like this. Crank Therapy. Crank Therapy. Crank Therapy. 2 to 4 p.m. Crank Therapy, Saturdays.
The Paradigm presents Welcome to the Queendom. Pretty Girls Crank 2. Featuring Belladonna Band and SOS Band. The eye candy of Go-Go. With an all-star cast of ladies featuring Miss Kim, Michelle Blackwell, Miss Lady, Lisette TT, Pretty Nikki, and Kiki. Also, a sister cipher featuring Mad Mom Spice, Meek Millie, and Miss Boogie. Hosted by the goddaughter of Go KK, Miss So Sick With It, plus Lisa of the World. Music by DJ Chanel B on the ones and twos. Friday, April 13th, live at the Paradigm, 5010 Brown Station Road, Upper Marlboro, Maryland, 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. Friday, April 13th, live at the Paradigm. For tickets and more information, call Reggie 240-347-5645, Lori 240-237-5666, or Third Eye 202-200-5559. DMV, you don't want to miss. Welcome to the Queendom.
Pretty girls, crank it.
Welcome to the Queendom. Be there.
Looking for a new look? Check out Hair Academy 2 in the Shops at Iverson, Hillcrest Heights, Maryland. You'll get quality services done by developing stylists and barbers. Senior discounts offered weekly and free barbershop services available when you present a flyer. Chemical treatments are also available. Call 301-899-9100 for hours of operation. Hair Academy 2 in the Shops at Iverson, 3705 Branch Avenue, Suite 1010, lower level, Hillcrest Heights. A new look is waiting for you at Hair Academy 2.
What's up, family? This is Reverend Tony Lee, the pastor of Community of Hope AME Church, lower level of the Iverson Mall, and I want to welcome you and tell you to come and join me, Community of Hope, each and every Sunday morning, 8 a.m., 10 a.m., 12 noon. That's right, 8 a.m., 10 a.m., 12 noon, lower level of the Iverson Mall. We say it every Sunday that we're the Community of Hope where everybody has a chance, and we don't care who you are, what you've done, who you did it with. Don't care if you did it last night, woke up doing it this morning, but when you get to church, you're in the right place at the right time to become all that God has called you to become. Don't you worry about getting out your best suit. You come as you are because God loves you just as you are. That's Community of Hope AME Church, lower level of the Iverson Mall. And did I tell you we got that crank? You need to get some further information or to watch us streaming online. www.hiphopenation.com. www.hiphopenation.com. This your man Reverend Tony Lee's in them. All right, I'll holler and I'll see you there.
Welcome back to the GoWin Radio Show right here on GoGo Radio Live, Win DC Radio, all wrapped up in GoWin.media, coming to you live from the Shops at Iverson. And now we have Mr. Some of you may call him controversial, but I actually just called him a freedom fighter. You know, you already know what that issue is. Yeah. So and some people I think have a problem with those who actually want to fight for what they believe in. And I think those are the ones that Jauhar was speaking of earlier. When somebody when they see that something that they feel like is not right and it's in their human nature and they feel like it's a problem for them and they stand up for that and speak on it, then there are those who are in whatever position they may be in, find them as a problem,
right? And
when that's the case, they seem to try to make your path to the direction that you're trying to go in. They try to make it difficult for them, and I think that since the time I've met you, and that was back in 99, 98, 99. I met you in 99. Since I've known you, you've always been one that, whether right or wrong, you wanted to be one to stand up upon the principles that you believed in.
Right.
So what's going on right now in the D.C. area, namely Southeast Washington, D.C., there's been a lot of upheaval, whether it be construction projects or a lot of deaths, not by natural causes, that's been going on, and just a lot of things in the city politics that that hasn't sat good with you. And I'm gonna jump right on this. Right now, it seems to be like a public fight with you and Mayor Bowser. Expand on that.
I'm not sure how this got to be. I mean, at the end of the day, I live in a community. I live in a city that's very wealthy. As I mentioned earlier, we have an annual budget somewhere in the neighborhood of $15 billion.
That's a lot of money. I mean, it's hard to believe that this is a city. There's states that don't have that type of budget.
Yes.
How is that even possible?
Well, I mean, we pay high taxes, and we walk past paying taxes, taxation with no representation. I mean, that's serious. I mean, we elect someone to Congress who don't have a vote. And so by us not having a vote, by D.C. not having a vote, that strips a couple of $1 billion potential revenue from us. But I personally don't think that the city is being managed well. And I think that things could be a lot better. And I think we have everything that we need in the city in terms of talent and resources, that things could be much better.
Well, how is that? Because it seems to be, and of course I'm playing devil advocate here, it seems to be that the city is doing very well. It's got a lot of new growth that it hasn't had in the last 20 years. Buildings are coming up. Communities seem to be growing and coming together. How is it that it is in a negative light that you're putting it?
So those of us that have survived and suffered through the poverty, I believe that we should have an opportunity to, share and enjoy some of the prosperity. I mean, it's as simple as that. When you got developers who come in and get these sweet deals, for $1, and then they get the government to fund the project's build out.
Okay. You brought that up last time. I can't let you go without being more specific about that actual situation, because I don't want to gloss over that, because there's people that are listening or maybe watching saying, what are you talking about? Please expand on that exact situation you're talking about, where somebody might get a deal for $1 and build on that.
So the district government have programs that if you're in blighted communities or communities that's run down, and obviously the property could have some value if somebody came in and invested in something and built something on it. And so the one that we got into with, in particular, in fact, there's going to be a community meeting tonight at the Rise Center on Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue.
Same place that Ms. Hopkinson was talking about earlier.
Right, on St. Elizabeth's campus,
right.
The Rise Center tonight at 6:30. The developer who received Big K, where the Big K liquor store used to be at on MLK, that old site that was, it's a historic site, and down what they refer to now as downtown historic Anacostia. He was awarded that. And just as a point of clarification, I have been saying that he was a friend of the mayor's, and the mayor had been funding this sweet deal for Tim Chapman. And some people who went back and read some of the project, they say, oh no, this was awarded to Tim Chapman under the Gray administration. And that is true. But what they don't know is that Tim Chapman was over in Ward 8 with Adrian Fenty way before Gray became the mayor. And so Tim Chapman goes back to Fenty, and Bowser is an extension.
Who is this Tim Chapman?
Like I said, has been a friend of, let's say, the Green Team. So even though he was awarded the project when Vince Gray was the mayor, the stuff that they were doing with him happened before Vince Gray became the mayor. And the financing for the project came on board when Muriel Bowser became the mayor. And the financing have been tremendous. The guy put a $1 bid in, and how he knew that he would win this project with a $1 bid.
How is that even possible?
It's a play. It's like me and you going to the casino.
Explain exactly how that worked out, because, like I said, you got people sitting here listening to us like that's not even possible.
Okay,
so
please
what be specific.
So what happens in these scenarios is you might have, the government knows that you in play, that you have, that you the guy that they're going to do this with. And you have people who work in government agencies, and they let you know when this property is going to come online or when this project is going to come online. And it has to be open to the public. So they might open it up for an hour, and you and 2 other people are made aware of it, and so the 3 of y'all bid on it. One person's paperwork is incomplete. They don't have everything they need. The other person's paperwork is wrong. And so your bid just happened to have everything that it needs, and you bid it for $1. So that made it legal, and it made it okay.
So you actually saying like there are some type of underhanded dealings far as where people or the government is working hand in hand with somebody, and they are told exactly how to make the situation work in the best behalf of them.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And what happens is, and see, for me, it's disrespectful when there's people like myself. There's a whole lot of people who are capable of doing those same kind of deals, but we also are going to do what's in the best interest of the community, meaning we're not going to come into the situation and get funded millions of dollars and take the money out of the community back to wherever we live at. If it was somebody in the community who was awarded that project, they're going to stay in the community, and they're going to help build the community up. So when people come from out of the community and they awarded these sweet deals, and then they refuse to cooperate or do stuff for people in the community, then that creates a problem for me. And so that's how we got to this place. I, as a business owner on that corridor, along with several other businesses, I was accused of taking it personal when we asked the mayor, well, we didn't ask the mayor, but we asked for help, from the city. We fought an illegal eviction at Cheers for over a year from somebody who's asking the mayor for over $100 million in tax credits, or taxpayers' dollars, and his interest is pushing poor black people out, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, this is clear with Stan Voudry and the Curtis brothers, the work that they're doing.
That's construction companies, correct?
Well, they're developers and property, real estate people. Mm-hmm. So they're asking the mayor for a TIF for over $100 million. A TIF? That's a tax credit, so that they can come in and do infrastructure work in the community, so they can build stuff.
So why would the mayor grant something like that?
Well, to me, either you don't know any better, or you have a line, or or they doing the things that you want them to do with the money. And so to me, I'm not like most of these people. See, if you, I don't care whether you black or white. If you mistreating the people, then you need to get called out on it. Now, because this is a business, the government operates like a business. I'm not opposed to black or white people making money, because I believe that you should have the opportunity to make money. But I also believe that you should have the responsibility of doing right by the people who are in that community. And when I see people coming in, flying in, taking everything, sucking the blood out of the community, and then leaving the people who are in the community there to struggle with it, then I take it personal. And so to that end, they decided they was going to build 150 units there. They decided they was going to put a Starbucks there. Everybody in the community I talked to said they didn't want a Starbucks there. And then there's a lot of people in the government that's complicit on this very specific project. Like, it's too many black people lying about what's going on this project, right? It's too many of them. And so I don't care about, well, People say, well, they're going to come after you. They've been coming after me my whole life. I'm not running nowhere. I'm where I'm at. And I don't even agree. Like, life ain't that precious to me as a man to be standing in a situation where you know that people just coming and robbing your community and robbing the people, robbing the sovereignty of the people of the community, and you just stand by and walk past like it's not going on. So no, I'm not. I've never been that kind of guy, Nico.
Well, I mean, you have a history, for a lack of a better term, pissing off people, and whether some people, like for me, I look at the rationale behind different moves. What's wrong?
No.
Okay, so. So what I really want is for people to understand that that you put certain situations in play on purpose. You're very strategic in your moves, and if a person doesn't know you well, they might not see it that way. So with the situation that happened, and I think that some people may be blind by the media case against you with the whole Peaceaholic situation. I think maybe using this platform and this time to clarify that, because maybe your name has been muddied in such a way that you may not be the so-called person to speak on behalf of what you're saying you're doing. Maybe they feel like, well, how can you dare stand on your high moral ground when you haven't done right yourself? So let's talk about how the case with the Peaceaholics, when it was brought down through was the Bow Ties administration when it came down?
No. It was
Gray's. It was Gray's. Okay, Gray's administration. All right. So let's talk about how that played a course into far as how you're being perceived in the public eye.
Okay. So again, we were just helping people, changing people's lives. That's what we was doing with the Peaceaholics, but we didn't realize the kind of political power that we had become. And so essentially, the government was funding us to teach young people and teach the community how to hold them accountable. And so essentially that became a problem, because it's like, I'm funding you and I'm paying you, and then the things that we doing wrong, you highlighting it. You kind of exposing us. And so it got to the point where, they were...
How is that possible?
I mean, before they might have a public meeting, and maybe 10 people would show up to the public meeting. But if it was something that was going to impact the community, we would organize all the people who work for us, and there'll be about 50 people, and we'd be like, look, everybody need to bring 5 people that they're working with to the hearing or to the meeting. So now you got 300, 400 people showing up, where before it was only 10 people showing up. And now when everybody's showing up looking at what's going on, it's like, whoa.
So it's a microscope.
Yeah, this kind of stuff, this would really be going on. And so one thing in particular, the lottery, it was a bid that went out for the lottery. Now, the average person not paying attention to the lottery contract. So it was a family that had the lottery contract for years.
What was it a lottery for?
DC lottery.
What?
And so that's
the gambling DC lottery?
Yeah, so that's a contract. Like, you could go bid on being the person who run the contract.
Seriously?
Yeah, and that contract, soft money, is probably, maybe $100 million in soft money over time. What do I mean by soft money? Money that's not committed, that you can kind of do whatever you want to do with it. See what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so they pay a company to come in to run the DC lottery. Now, poor people play the lottery. Rich people don't play the lottery, right? Because it's poor people trying to hit.
Right.
So I'm saying, y'all making all this money off of poor people, take some of that money and invest it back in the community.
Well, they say that's what they're supposed to be doing with that money. They're supposed
but
to be,
that's not.
They say that money that goes into the DC lottery is supposed to be going back to funding the schools and getting the roads together in the city. How do we?
All you gotta do is follow the money.
That's what I'm just about to ask you.
And so one family had the money all these years, and then some guy that we knew, and you know, a guy that used to own Club U, Warren Williams.
Yes.
He was involved in a company that applied for the contract. They had the best proposal, right? And the people who were in charge of procurement was told not to award him the contract, even though he had the best proposal.
In whose eyes was that the best proposal, though?
The government, the way they scored it. Mm-hmm. So everybody who writes a proposal, who responds to an RFP as a request for a proposal, he had got a great grade on his proposal. In his proposal, he had met with us, Peaceaholics, and said, look, we're going to work with you guys, and we're going to establish a fund for several $1 million a year, and we're going to use it for the Boys and Girls Clubs, the cheerleading programs, everything that you guys say that people come to y'all for funding about. We're going to put a trust together with several $1 million a year, and we're going to make sure that all those programs are funded, so you don't have to depend on the government. In fact, while we were spending, $50,000 on the Go-Go Awards, they were so invested in helping, they wrote checks to help us with the Go-Go Awards because they wanted to be invested in the community, and they knew the kind of things that were important to the community. Now, the people who had that contract for years and years before that, not only did we never see them, we didn't know who they were until the fight started. And once the fight started...
What fight is this?
Over why they didn't want to award Warren Williams and his company the contract. Mm-hmm. Because the guy who had it for several years had a lot of political friends. And he did a lot of fundraisers. He did a lot of stuff to help people that was in office.
Right.
So that became a problem.
Well, that's how politics works. You know that.
Yeah, but it's not how it's supposed to work. The way it's supposed to work is if it's an open bid and you apply for something and you meet all the requirements and you have the best proposal, you should be awarded the contract. They tried to bully the procurement officer. He ended up going to court. He lost his job. He lost everything because he would not break the law, and he stood on awarding the contract to the people who had the best offer through procurement. So he ended up losing his job. It became a big court case. He just settled his case a couple of years ago, but he lost everything for 6 or 7 years. He ain't had no money to take care of his family, all this stuff, because politics gets so nasty in this city. Most people don't fight them. When they start picking a fight with me, I'm going to fight them because I don't have nothing to lose. Like, I came in here with nothing, and I'm going to leave with nothing. So I'm going to make sure my name is good. So they came up with some investigation on Peaceaholics that the way it started is Yvette Alexander said, well, Peaceaholics got about $10 million, and we don't know what happened to the money.
Yvette Alexander, she was on the board, she was city council board.
Yeah, Ward 7.
Right.
So she said that to a reporter in the Washington Post. And let me go back before that. We had a meeting with several of the council members, and they had a concern about our interest in other things other than working with kids. So it was like,
could that possibly be?
Like the lottery. We shouldn't be concerned about stuff like that. We shouldn't be concerned about construction and development. And so I'm saying the construction and development, those are jobs. Like if we dealing with violence, we need to be concerned about this because jobs take people off the street.
Right.
But that made people uncomfortable when we started talking about that. It made people uncomfortable when we came down to city council with 300 people with T-shirts on with the name of the company that should have won the award for the lottery. People got uncomfortable. It was like, why are they doing that? So anyway, they met with us, and I never forget MB giving us a proposition. And then, you know, we said we were going to, you know, we was going to remain doing what we was doing. We didn't get in it to be choosing sides politically and all of that. We got in it just to help the people. And he said, well, y'all going to leak all the way to the polls with your guy. I didn't know what he was saying at the time. But 2 weeks after that, an incident happened at Spingarn that put Peaceaholics in the news in a negative way because the young girl said that somebody touched her. Now,
and wasn't it, if I remember correctly, wasn't somebody from your camp working in the school at that time?
It was the guy who worked for us was accused of touching the little girl. Right. We did our investigation. We didn't believe that that was true. We would never stand with nobody who do anything to harm children. So we didn't believe that it was true. So we wanted to bring it to its fullest, you know, the potential of the conclusion. We wanted to make sure he got a fair trial because this was serious. This was a serious allegation. And the reason this was a serious allegation is because we had a position that we hired people with records. DC Public Schools was DC Public Schools had a thing in place where they discriminated against people who had records. So they pulled me and my partner in and said, look, we can approve y'all to come into school, the two of you, but we're not going to let everybody else come in because they have records. So we took the position that, no, if they can't come in, we ain't going in. And we'll have a press conference. So we never was the kind of guys who they could get us to do stuff for a contract or money. Like, we leave that money on the table. So it's like, no, the people who really have the ability to change the schools are people who used to get in trouble in school, people who made bad decisions. Some of them went to prison. Some of them got turned out to the streets, but now they've changed their lives. They can become a valuable asset in the community, and they can help in schools because the schools have a lot of social problems. So the young people just don't go to school and have their academics to deal with. When they hit the school building, they got their social issues that got to be addressed as well.
That affects your learning ability.
It affects the whole climate of the school. So what we knew was that if we put life coaches in the building, we could keep the halls clear. We could stop the drug selling. We could stop the violence. We could stop the prostitution. We could stop the gambling because the young people responded to us in a way that they didn't respond to government officials. That made us a threat. And so...
Why are you a threat? Oh, I'm sorry, sis. Go ahead.
So I was just going to back up a little bit. What was the gentleman convicted of?
So he was convicted of touching, I don't...
No, prior to.
Oh, so prior to that, he went to prison in the 1970s for murder.
Okay.
And so because he had a murder, so the government was fine with our design from the beginning because we told them that the kind of people that we hiring didn't come from Harvard and Yale. Yeah. We hiring people who, like, if a snake, if you get bit by a snake, the cure for the venom that you got bit by the snake, it comes from the snake.
Right. That's right.
So I got put out of public schools when I was 8 years old for showing my, you know what. So I know what it's like to be in school and be disruptive and not be interested in learning and what's going on during the day. So we look to hire people like that. And at some point I sat around one day with my staff, and 8 out of every 10 people that work for us in the community doing outreach had either been shot or stabbed at some point in their life. So when we went to Spingarn, it was shootouts almost every day at the school. So I had to assign people to the school who were not afraid of gunplay, because that's what we were dealing with. So the gentleman had a murder in the 70s, but he was working in Spingarn in 2008. So it was over almost 30 years.
38 years.
Yeah, it was 30 years. So he served his debt to society. It wasn't like he was still carrying a gun and still going around shooting people. You know what I'm saying? He changed his life, and he was trying to do something good to give back to the community. But we were warned a couple of weeks before that we were going to leak all the way to the polls. I couldn't have a press conference to say that because would nobody have been interested.
Right.
But we was told this.
You had nothing to substantiate.
Plus, I didn't even know what it meant. Because I was sitting there scratching my head trying to figure out, man, are we being threatened? Like, I know they don't think that they can. Me. You know what I'm saying? But for real, this is what it was. And it's no different than any other leader or any other black people who ever showed up in our communities who've taken a position against, unfair practices of the government or different people in power who don't really have the intention on doing right by underprivileged people. It's simple. You see what I'm saying? And so I knew that they were going to bother us. I just didn't know how. And so the next couple of weeks passed, another news flash. Peaceaholics are trying to take a fire truck and an ambulance to the Dominican Republic.
Oh, yeah.
And the cost of the fire truck is $360,000. So now, when I'm in the street, I'm going in the barber shop and different places, people like, man, y'all bought a fire truck for y'all peaceaholics. Like, what y'all got to do with fire trucks and all that? You see what I'm saying? So this was becoming highly political, right? And we were like goldfish swimming with sharks because we didn't understand.
Was it the truth? What was the story behind it?
So the story behind it is every major city in America has what they call surplus inventory, meaning that every 2 or 3 years that their equipment comes offline and they can use a nonprofit to donate the equipment to a third world country. Simple as that. Haiti, Dominican Republic, those are third world countries. We met with the mayor through a few other partnerships. Some people we were working with wanted to donate some surplus equipment from D.C. to the island. And we were the nonprofit that was friendly with the administration that they asked, could we partner with them to do it? Because we were taking young people, they were in a boxing club, and they were going to the DR to fight. There was a guy that was a fireman that was a boxing trainer as well. And so that's how the whole relationship came about. So it was totally legal. There was nothing wrong with it. But what happens is when they leak that to the press, white people start saying, well, if they're a nonprofit group that work with at-risk youth, what are they doing with a fire truck and that kind of stuff? And so black people start saying stuff like, they got that much money that they buying fire trucks? When the truth of the matter is the government, with the police cars, the government cars, the fire trucks, the ambulances, after a couple of years, specifically with fire trucks, it costs more than $300,000 to repair them, to keep them on the road. So after a couple of years, they sell them or they give them away to a smaller country. You know what I'm saying? And so that's all that was. But this was another black eye for Peaceaholics. We leaking there all the way to the polls with Adrian Fenty, who's the mayor. The next thing, Yvette Alexander, who was the Ward 7 council member, releases a statement and says, well, Peaceaholics got $10 million and we don't know what happened to the money. Now, she didn't say we misused the money. She didn't say we stole it. She was careful in what she said. She said they don't know what happened. So people who understand the government and government procurement knows that every time you get a contract that's over $1 million, right, the council as a whole has to approve it. And they don't approve it without you having an audit. And I had one of the best agencies in D.C. doing the audits for us. And when Jim Graham looked and saw who was doing the audits for us, Jim Graham was the Ward 1 council member at the time. He was like, wow, how did y'all get to them? And I said, we had to find the best because we knew one day y'all was going to come bothering us. And I share the audit with you. The D.C. auditor came to audit us as well. Black people who were attorneys with them were told to make up stuff on us. And they resigned because they refused to do it. So this stuff is real. So it normally take them, we had total maybe, including the housing project, we had about $17 million allocated to us. It normally take, if DC is doing an audit for $17 million, they can do that with their staff. They can do that in 3 or 4 days. They had our books for about 6 months. Why it take 6 months? They did an audit on Department of Transportation, and you can look up what their budget is, somewhere close, several hundred millions of dollars a year. They did that in about a week. We had $17 million, and they had our stuff for 6 months. And then they came back. And then it took them another couple of months. They sent black people over first. They took all of our stuff out of our office. We shared it with them. They went through all of it. We went down and met with them. They took the black people off of our project because they went back and said that it's no way they could have made up this amount of stuff. There's no way they could have came up with this amount of money in receipts and canceled checks in 2 weeks. There's no way they could have done this. The stuff they have is legitimate. So the next week, all white people came to take our stuff again. And when they came back, you can read the D.C. auditor's report. She said we had some, that we should take some fault for the way some of our accounting practices were. But the D.C. government should take some too because of their oversight, right? And the real issue in oversight with them was they never dealt with an organization like ours before. Like we was the first organization like this. So they couldn't tell us what to do and how to spend money and who we should hire and who we could and couldn't hire because we were not a government agency. And that was the truth of the matter. And so we fell out over this stuff. So eventually they came back and said, well, we're going to sue you because if they gave us that amount of money and they went through all of our bank accounts, personal, business, we had several business accounts, they went through everything. If they had found that we had stole any money, I'm the most unpopular guy probably who ever walked in that building. They would have turned it over for criminal prosecution, right? The way the number got up to 600,000, like if you just read the article, you would say, damn, Jauhar took $600,000. No. What happens is they say that I bought 2 trucks to enrich myself. 2 trucks. Anybody who's around the Peaceaholics knew we had 2 white trucks. They were identical trucks. If you go back and get the Washington Post article after they said that, in my interview with them, I said if I was doing something to enrich myself, I would have bought me a black truck and a white truck. They would have had rims on it. It would have been laid out. Why would I buy 2 of the exact same trucks? And then here goes the insurance declaration. Why is the insurance declaration important? Because there are 8 people, names on the insurance to drive these 2 vehicles. I can't drive both of them at the same time. So how am I enriching myself?
Well, last time you was here and you spoke on that, you said that you put the trucks underneath your name.
Yes.
Why not in the business name?
Because the business wasn't old enough to have or established enough to have credit. In fact, if you go right now with GoWin DC, this your company.
Right.
You can't go buy a car in this company's name.
That's true.
You can put the car in the company's name, but they want your personal information as the guarantor.
Yeah, I'm going through that right now.
Yeah, so if people don't ask those questions, they won't know. It's simple. Like anything that we buy, somebody has to say that I'm going to be responsible for making sure the bill get paid.
Yeah, but it wasn't. Wouldn't it be like a DBA or in your name, but in the name of the business? Because even the company is not old enough to establish the credit. When you go in and you open up your, you're getting all this. You can show financials. You can show them the car dealerships. You can show them financials. There's something that could have been possibly. I know personally that could have been done to say, hey, if somebody gets into an accident, you had the insurance. The insurance people was saying, hey, this is good enough to put all these people on the declaration based on it being a nonprofit. But the creditor, you're stating that they were like, no, it doesn't qualify. You don't qualify.
No, the insurance declaration was in my name as well. It was not drivers. Right. And I just had additional drivers because the people who drove the trucks, I needed them to need to make sure they had a license, and I need to make sure that that they had a license, and I need to make sure they were insured while they were driving the vehicle, because personally, like I did get sued because we rented a vehicle and somebody had an accident, turned the truck over, and I got sued personally for that because my name, you can't get stuff from the bank. Like once you get a Dun and Brad number, you still have to build up a certain amount of credit. You have to be around for a while. And then even if they give it to you, because we did eventually get vans in the company's name, somebody has to be the guarantor. Some person has to be. So if a bill don't get paid or whatever, first they're going to go after the company. But if the company don't have anything, they coming after a person. Because so it's almost like you have to be the co-signer.
Well, so if your business is if you're an LLC, corporation, or sole proprietor.
We was incorporated.
Right, so that's the difference from being incorporated, LLC, and sole proprietorship. They can't come after. If I'm a sole proprietor, all day, every day, come after me. But if I'm a corporation, it's on the business.
So even with them suing us, we were a corporation. We were incorporated. Right. It should have stopped there. But I'm just saying it was personal.
Right.
So when I see, like when Nico or different people ask me, like, how could I ever support like Donald Trump? See, unless you've been on the other side
Nico
of a highly...
That, but go ahead. Nico already knows.
When you on the other side of these personal attacks, when it's really a witch hunt, like when you really on the other side of that, and then somebody say this is fake news and all that. See, I've experienced that. I know what that is. Just like the guy put me in the paper the other day, and he bought up the $600,000. Well, if he did his research, if he wasn't being a yellow journalist, if he did his research, he would know that I got the judgment because I didn't go to court. Like, it wasn't we went to a trial. Yeah, we went to a trial and all that. They never served me. So I paid a lawyer to go get in court because they never served me. And so they lied about serving me. They took the paperwork, like all this stuff is verifiable. They took the paperwork to one of my children's mother's houses and threw the paperwork at her door. That's not serving me. The day that happened, I was in Massachusetts with a young lady who was getting her master's degree, who was in the Peaceaholics program. Like all this is documented. Like all this can be proven. But again, what they were trying to do was silence me. What they was trying to do was sully or ruin my reputation. And so that's all that was. And I knew the day after I left court, if I wanted to, I could have just went and filed bankruptcy. And it would have came right off. Like, because they knew, and first of all, they knew we didn't have no $600 and something thousand somewhere. And what the average person don't know is the total cost of the trucks was $80,000. But when you get sued, they can do triple whatever the cost was, and then penalties and legal fees. That's how it got up to $600 and something thousand. So people think, well, it was $600 and something thousand.
No, triple.
Yeah,
Triple the amount.
I mean, that's with anything with the government, as far as even if criminal charges, like drug charges. They say, well, hey, you were down, we caught you with this, but you were down there this many times, and you could have seen this many of people, so we going to do the math and say, hey, you were a kingpin.
I didn't know.
No, in the DC government specifically, if they sue you civilly, you know, something dealing with money and property, they can charge you 3 times the amount. And then you got the legal fees. So I'm just saying that it was never $600 and something thousand. And I had access to $17 million. If I was stealing money or if I was doing something like that, do you think that it would have just been 2 trucks? I mean, is that what people think? Like, people don't have no idea. And when you do show up to court and you fighting the government and you got one attorney and they have 10 attorneys, 12 attorneys showing up, and every time you leave court, they filing motions. They never intended to let us come to court. Them filing motions meant I had to spend money to respond to the motion. Right. And so you do this, you do this, you do this, and you're doing this for 6 to 8 months. You're doing this for 2 years. And then eventually my lawyer said, you know what, Jauhar? They don't want y'all to come to court. Like, they never want y'all to get in court. Because what they talking about, these 2 trucks, his investigator already talked to like 10 or 12 parents who said Jauhar wasn't driving me in the truck in particular, but this guy took me and my kids to college in South Carolina in the truck. This guy did this. This guy picked our kids up from school in these trucks. So if we had got to court, how am I enriching myself by having 2 vehicles in my name that everybody else drives as well?
All right. For those of you just tuning in, or you've been tuning in, you tuned into the GoWin radio show right here on GoGo Radio Live, Windy C Radio, wrapped up in GoWin.media, coming to you live from the shops at Iverson. And we're doing a little overtime right here with our local and friend of mine's political activists from the D.C. neighborhoods, the Washington, D.C. neighborhoods that we have right here, Jauhar Abraham. So, Jauhar, what ended up coming of all this situation with the $600,000 that they say that you owed? I mean, is that a suit? Is that hanging over your head currently, or what? What's going on with that?
Just depends on how you look at it. It ain't hanging over my head, but they use it to try to frame, like, let's say I organize people and we shut down these illegal construction sites, right? Mm-hmm. Then the news reporter will write that and put that in the newspaper article to make it like he's trying to diminish the value of what I'm talking about. Like, he want people to talk about that and not talk about them not hiring black people on these jobs, or them not talking about the city not giving the businesses on that corridor money to help improve their businesses, but giving Starbucks $1.5 million to build out a multi-billion-dollar corporation to build out a store for them in Anacostia where people don't even want Starbucks.
But
so
would he be in his right legal lane to state that? I mean, is it any truth to it as far as is it an obligation, or has it been settled? Has it been dismissed?
No, it has not. It is a judgment. Okay. And so, but again, if I was concerned or worried about it legally, I could have just filed a Chapter 7, and it just went right away. That's how it works. But I mean, I'm not worried about it. I mean, I'm still around here doing what I'm doing, because if I did what they accused me of doing, with my reputation with them, I would be in jail. There's no way that I could take $700,000 of grant money and use it for what I want to use it for and break the law and not be criminally charged.
So do you think that it helped or hurt the situation, the whole ordeal? You had a partner in the Peaceaholics, mm-hmm. and if you only read, you would see that he settled. So do you think that situation helped or hurt your situation? Because if you read on, it would say that, he was kind of negating the fact that there's an issue and just saying, hey, I wasn't responsible. I'm here because my name is on, on the paperwork. We together, but in reality, we not. I mean, that's what
Well, we're not going to gloss over. We don't do that here. So we're speaking.
No,
about
I'm just saying what
I'm
I
talking about the names.
over.
Yes,
Okay,
yes. So we're speaking of his partner, Ronald Moulton.
I was waiting for him
those
to answer. Bring it up because I said you had a partner.
I just want our listeners to have a full picture here.
Right. So again, I can't speak for nobody else. I only speak for myself. And what.
But you had a partner in the situation.
But what I'm saying, do you think him settling helped or hurt your situation because it was a?
I mean, I think it gave our whole whatever we were doing because I know he wasn't guilty enough, and I know he didn't do anything wrong. Right. So I'm not going to settle for something if I didn't do anything wrong, and unless he did something that I wasn't aware of. But and I can never say 1,000% because we ended up with separate cases, even though it was the same thing. I mean, it was just it was done very illegally. Very illegal. But if you don't have the money to fight the government, like you would end up spending everything trying to, fight them. And if they never gonna go to court, all you're going to keep doing is responding to issues and so every time your lawyer have to write up something, it costs money. Every time you got to go back to court, it costs money. So to me, I never respected the whole thing because I thought it was illegal. I can't speak for speak for nobody else because it hasn't stopped me from doing anything that I want to do. It has not stopped me. Essentially, that closed down the operation of Peaceaholics, right? But that was their intent. I mean, they knew once they stopped giving us contracts, because the money wasn't ours, so they knew once they stopped giving us contracts, that was going to impact our ability to do the work. But the flip side of it is, in terms of me personally, I knew that they was trying to hit my reputation, but I knew that when I got involved in the work. So I don't sit around and cry about it or whine about it. It's like, if that's the best thing you could come up with, I know who you are. It's like when the devil is doing devilishment, why am I questioning what they doing? Like, I know what their purpose was. And just like when the guy put that in the paper again the other day, something that's 8 years old, like, if I really did that, then I should have been criminally charged because in that climate, the FBI was in all of the Wilson bill. They was looking at everybody's stuff. The Attorney General, Inspector General, the DC Auditor, everybody's stuff was going through it. And people was going to jail. People went to jail. And I didn't have what they had.
Some people still in jail.
Yeah, I didn't have high-powered attorneys and big law firms and all that. My stuff was a little more simple. What I did have is I got an audit. I got an independent audit from one of the best accounting firms in D.C. I got that. And I got the audit from the D.C. auditor, right? And nowhere in neither one of those audits did it say that we took $700,000. Nowhere. And nowhere did it say that we couldn't account for the $10 million that this conversation started with. What happened was we started changing our communities. We started getting young people going to college. We started getting young people to come to school. The truancy rate went down. And what most people don't understand is that all this stuff is a big business, right? And so a lot of the council members and the public officials knew that we were being wrongly attacked. And because I was well read and grounded, Dr. King prepared me for that. Because Dr. King said, it's not the behavior of your opposition or your enemy. It's not their behavior that's the problem. The problem is the appalling silence of those people who know better. And so it was a whole bunch of people who stood around and knew what was happening to us wasn't right. But for political reasons, you got to decide what you're going to spend your political capital on if you're a politician. Are you going to jump in and defend these guys? Are you going, you got to decide if you get 1 or 2 checks, you got to decide when you're going to write them. And we just wasn't worth that to anybody that was in position at the time.
That's a good segue. So let's bring it up to date. Your friend and your council member that's in your district, Trayon White, council member Trayon White, he's going through a trying period at this time for what you spoke on a little bit earlier. You touched on it earlier about initially what he said about the Jews controlling the climate.
That's not what he said.
Well,
but
no. Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
So, and I say all that to say that, do you see a semblance of how he's being attacked right now to what you went through? And if you do you, by him being a younger gentleman, do you talk to him and say, well, look, bro, I tried to warn you, they coming for you because you are not of the same cloth?
So I don't advise. I want to make this clear. I'm nobody's political advisor. I don't. Councilmember White is a well-read young man. He's smart, and some things he's gonna learn through experience, because that's what you have to do. But what I do know is that he is for the people, and history tells me that any time a man or woman is for the people, that they're going to come under attack from people who are not about the people. And the majority of the people who control and make the decisions in our city are not for people. They for profit. And it's a difference. And you got to know them when you see them. And so I fight these people every day. And I've been fighting them my whole adult life.
So I wanted to just a little bit. And when you talked about the fire truck, you talked about all those things, and you said you were friends of administration. It just hearing the story, just for myself, it just sounds like, and you kind of, the great segue from you said with Dr. King, when you know better, kind of like when you know better, you do better. Mm-hmm. So if turning back the hands of time, would you do anything different? Because it seems to me that you took the bait that was there to fail. So again, if I was going to be political, I would do things different. If I was trying to exist in that in the political realm, of course I would do something different. Like one of the things that we did, me and my partner at the time, we supported one administration. If I was going to do it again and I was going to be political, if one of us was with one person, then the other person should have probably been with the other person. In other words, if you got 2 people running for office, you don't put all your eggs in one basket. That's if you want to be political. But I don't necessarily want to be political. I just want to do what I think is right. And so I don't know that I would ever turn my back on somebody that I consider a friend because somebody else in politics don't like that person. You know what I'm saying? And essentially that's what we were being, told we had to do. So I don't even hear stuff like that when, like, I choose my friends. Other people don't choose my friends.
Well, anything else, Miss Lady?
No, that's about it. No, okay, where? How do you move, just like you said, moving forward now to the present, when you have the naysayers and you have the people that write articles and always bring that up, how do you bounce back from that? How do you just bounce back by not just saying whatever, I ain't tripping off that, but just, do you find yourself having to prove anything to anybody?
No, because I think that if people have a reasonable amount of intelligence and they see the positions that I've taken, that like they try to scare people all the time. Like if I did something wrong, and believe me, I'm not saying that everything that we did in Peaceaholics was perfect. The district government lose hundreds of millions of dollars every year. If somebody come and audit the government right now, they can't find money. Stuff is going on. They can't find property, right? So and they got all kinds of accountants and all, you know, they got hundreds of accountants and lawyers and all that stuff. So I'm not going to say that we don't, or we didn't make mistakes, because of course we make mistakes. Like, it's a part of the process, a part of where you're growing. But what I would say is that absolutely we did not defraud or take money that was meant for one thing and use it for something else. So that would be my response to that.
Somebody wanted to ask him a question
Right.
online. One of your supporters wanted to call in. I was just telling Nico.
About to give him the number, but
but
I do want to ask something before they call in. Is with the situation with the Big K situation in the Southeast. Where are you at right now with that situation? Because I noticed that, you know, at one time you had shut down the construction process that was going on. What is going on currently at this moment?
So tonight, I spoke about this earlier. Tonight at the Rise Center on Martin Luther King Jr. Avenue on the St. Elizabeth campus, we're having a meeting. There's a community meeting tonight with representatives from Starbucks, from Tim Chapman's development, and I'm sure some of the government officials are going to be there to have a discussion with the community about what they plan on doing.
So are they still doing the construction? Is it halted at the moment? Or?
No, the construction is, we allowed the construction to go on because we started a process of negotiating.
Mm-hmm.
So and what we negotiating is jobs, equity, because it's a $50 million project being built off of that $1. It's a $50 million project that DC tax dollars are being used. Like a lot of people are under the impression that these rich white developers are coming in doing this stuff, and that's not the case. The government is pretty much funding this stuff, and they just choosing who they're going to make the deal sweet for. And so...
Okay, we have a caller that wants to call in and ask you a question. Thank you for calling into the GoWin Radio Show right here on GoGo Radio Live, WinDC Radio. Caller, who is this?
This is Landy Thompson. How you doing today?
All right, what's happening, sir? How you been?
I saw the brother Jauhar there, and one thing y'all should know, he should be commended for the work that he did through the city. I was one of those people that worked for Jauhar, and I watched them brothers do the work, and I watched them save lives, and I watched them give their all for the city. And you got to remember, when you do stuff like that, and you have an outcome where you make change, you're always going to be under the gun. And when brothers like him exist and they do things for the community that exists of black people in those communities, you're always going to be challenged. That brother showed me how you run an organization and how you be successful in serving the youth and how you work in your community. At some point in time, you know when you do things like that, the people are going to come after you. That wasn't his intent. His intent was to do the work in the business because I worked for him. When I saw him on this show, I had nothing better that I could do but call in and support that brother because all that flack and grief he got, nobody talked about the lives they saved. Nobody talked about the hours and time they spent in D.C. public schools, after kids, traveling, trips. I know about college. I know about him being in the hoods of some of the worst places in the District of Columbia. I watched it firsthand. He probably didn't even think I would call in, but to me, they were my idols because I watched people give a strong part of them for youngins in the District of Columbia from Southeast, Northeast, Northwest, wherever, and wherever it took for them to go and make things right in the community for people to be safe. Them brothers was doing that, man. I was from uptown and came and worked for them. I saw it for myself. So some of the things he got as far as flack from the community and jealous people and other nonprofits, that's what they probably was going through a lot of. People were jealous that they were making the work happen, that they were taking the initiative to be bold enough to step in hoods and squash beasts But the little petty stuff that happened was only the backbiting people that want some jealous type time. When you put your life on the line for kids, when you make sure families eat, make sure water's on, make sure people are safe, they did so much good work, it made me start a nonprofit uptown. And I have to commend you, Jauhar. You was the person that got me in that direction. So the flack and grief you got, brother, I pray that you come through everything you were dealing with, because you're a strong individual, man.
Man,
and I hope you know who you're talking to, man.
Man, I do. I know we ain't seen each other, man, probably over 5-6 years. But, yeah, it's good to know you still doing the work, man.
And for those who are listening in, this is Big Chewy. We play his music
right about that.
Quite a bit on the station. So, and we appreciate you for calling in, brother. Thank you.
Jauhar, keep your head up, man. You always been a strong brother, man. You a soldier, man. Keep your head up, man.
All right, thank you, brother. Good talking to you.
No problem. Y'all have a good one. Love you, man. Love y'all.
All right, peace.
Appreciate you, man.
Thank you. Yeah, so that's not a supporter. That I believe that's a as they would say in the church, that's a witness.
Yeah.
You know, so
testimony.
There it is. There it is.
So I mean, and if we had made it to court, I mean, when I say this, literally, we would have had 1,000 witnesses to come to court to say stuff like that.
And that's what I was saying. I was saying,
Yeah.
you know, like, I don't know if you call them co-defendant or, you know, partner or whatever the case may be. I just think that me personally, my personal opinion, just like you said, I'm not saying if I didn't do nothing wrong. You know what I'm saying? So I guess people's mentality are different. So,
well,
you know.
Well, I understand how the law works.
Definitely.
And we know for a fact that
we probably all do.
The way they split you and your partner up and make separate cases, that's what they do. You know, so maybe one of you might flip on the other or whatever the case may be, and they keep them screws turned tight, you know, to do so. So I commend both of you for the fact that it didn't get ugly like that, like we tend to see sometimes, especially with our people. You know, like, oh, it wasn't me, it was him. Right. And it was none of that finger pointing. You know, and that's, to me, that's what I commend. Without even knowing all the in-depth situation, what was really going on underneath, well, you said what you said, but, you know, nobody knows. There's only a couple people that was there, you know. And so by me not being there, I'm not going to speak on something I don't know, but I do know that it was not no public display, negative display, you know, and that's what's beneficial to our people. You know, that we can stand through the test of times and this mess that was brought up against y'all, and y'all to hold y'all heads up and say, well, look, you know, they may try to split us up, but we're going to fight this and we're going to move forward in our lives.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we all are different people, different individuals, and we stand on different things. Right. You know what I'm saying? And I can't tell nobody else how to feel. Right. I just know how I feel, and I look at, you know, I just look at them as the enemy. I mean, they were not interested in the good stuff or anything that we did. They were not interested in the outcomes, how the money was spent, how many lives were saved. None of that. Just come look and see, well, what did you do wrong? What did you do wrong? What did you do wrong? When your stuff ain't right, how you going to come and talk to me about, in fact, the organization, the Children's Trust, that was the organization that they used to funnel the money to the nonprofits. They ended up folding because all of their accounting practices were terrible. And so they ended up folding. And you can look them up, the Children's Youth Investment Trust Corporation. I mean, it was a horrible agency, and all they did was mishandle money. And so as a part of the witch hunt, they put them out there to say that we did stuff, but we held them accountable. If I could write a book about the amount of times we had to storm into their office and make them cut us a check for $400,000 and $500,000, like, because they was holding our money. And we was doing all kind of work that they couldn't get nobody else in the city to do. And then we had to pay people. And they sitting there with millions and millions of dollars in the bank drawing interest for their benefit, for their company, while we got people out there risking their lives in the middle of gunfire, and they don't want to give us the money so we can make payroll. So it's like, I would never cooperate or be a person that would speak highly of those kind of people who try to do stuff to tear us down. And I'm not even angry or mad at them, because that's their job. I mean, that's what they employed to do. You know what I'm saying? And my job is to keep on doing what I'm doing. And it doesn't matter whether I'm here, whether I'm locked up, or wherever, wherever you at. You know what I'm saying? If you got what I'm here to do on you, you're going to just keep on doing it. It don't matter where you at.
Do you see any organizations that are now operating in the present that mimic what you guys were doing? Or?
No, it's not even close. It's not even close.
Well, to back that up, because it's crazy. This is why this is my sister, and I love her to death. I was gonna rephrase. Let me rephrase that question for her. Do you see anybody coming up behind what you all started to further what you're trying to do?
Your agenda,
I mean, really, we have, and I've said this over and over, the stuff that we have and what we learn don't belong to us. So if it was somebody out there trying to do it in that kind of way, I'd be happy to just give it to them. Give them the blueprint, because it really is not, it don't belong to us.
Well, what did belong to you is the fact that you all were, as for the lack of a better term, street soldiers, and you would go into those places where a lot of people were scared to go, and handle situations. I remember, you and Mo telling me at times y'all would get calls 3-4 o'clock in the morning from the police saying, "Yo, we need y'all here to handle this situation because bullets are flying, or we need this situation taken care of." And it was crazy about that is the politicians, they don't want to get their hands dirty, but they're quick to point the finger.
No question about it. And you do what's expediently, whatever is politically expedient. Right. So you don't have, one of the things that I learned, you don't have permanent enemies and permanent friends.
But let me ask you this. Before I want to get out of here on this question, because we've gone way over. But is there a means in politics, whether it be on the local level or the on the big level, as far as in Congress, is there a means? Are there people put in place to really subside? Because you're never going to stop crime. I mean, crime has been here from the beginning of time. If you believe in the Bible, you look at Cain and Abel. You know what I'm saying? So crime is always going to be here, and it always has been here. But is there something in the political arena to actually subside this instead of push it along?
Again, people, the power is in the people. So when the right people are in the right place at the right time, they can make the right things happen.
So we can't look at politics to help us.
Not politicians. The people make the politics. And when people realize that and own it, like, I don't refer to the government as something different than me, because I'm a part of the people are the government.
Right.
Now, in America,
even though they don't act as such.
Well, in America, we've been trained to be, through this education platform, we're trained to be residents as opposed to being citizens. And the difference is, when you're a resident, you just reside somewhere. When you're a citizen, you take responsibility. You take ownership. Mm-hmm. So you're a part of the PTA. You're a part of the civic association. You're a part of the neighborhood council, the resident council. I mean, you're doing things You showing up to community meetings. You doing stuff to make a difference. You holding people accountable. When you're a resident, you just come in and go in the house. You know, you don't want to be bothered. You just try to make sure your house is all right. And because we are conditioned to be that way, people who generally don't have the best interests of people in place, they get to make the decisions. And their decisions are based on profit. Is based around profit.
That's how the country was built, though, Jauhar.
Yeah.
You know, off the backs of free labor.
Yeah, like King said, we coming for our check.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you got to really show up. I mean, you can't get the check if you a no show. You know what I'm saying?
That's right.
And for the most part, we've been no shows, but hopefully we keep coming through and using platforms and social media and
such as this
radio.
one.
That's right, and we're able to have these community discussions. So hopefully it'll provoke people to start thinking, to want to get involved more. Because that's where the change starts, when people decide that they're going to get involved.
Well, are you doing anything that people can get involved in if you're not, like, say, if you're not a D.C. resident in your area? Is there something that
Yes, because the same things are going on all over. In particular, this region, Prince George's County, is touted as the #1 county in the country for African Americans. We got the most homeowners, most college-educated people. We make the most money per capita, and then we got the worst public school system. So how is that? We got married families.
Yeah, that's because
they make
Virginia
money.
Creates the curriculum.
They own money.
And don't
I mean, they got their own money. How can you have the worst public school system? So you got all that going on.
But look who got. That goes back to, and I don't want to draw this out too much, but look who got that person who's running the Prince George's County school system in place. And we don't want to get too political because we got somebody we're going to be hosting a young lady who's going to be running for that seat. We're going to be bringing her on April 9th. And I'm speaking of the one and only Miss Angela Also Brooks. So we got her coming in. So and we're going to be talking with her. But I correct me if I'm wrong, Miss Lady. Were you alluding to? Is there any ways that somebody can get with you?
Get with you.
Yes. I mean, they can call me directly or they can inbox me on Facebook. It's my name, Jauhar Abraham. And then my number is 202-355-5525.
That's the bat line.
Yeah.
He don't pick it up, but just text him.
202.
Ring it off the hook. He picked it up.
202-355-5525. And we got all kinds of programs, mentoring programs for young boys, young girls. We job readiness, workforce development, entrepreneur opportunities. We got a lot going on.
Only in the district?
Mostly in D.C., but again, the stuff is necessary in Prince George's County. Right, so, definitely. I mean, it's a blueprint. So you just take it wherever people are and find some people who are willing to help.
I'm the, I'm the parent liaison, peer mediator at a local high school in the county. So.
Okay. Well, anytime. And thank y'all for having me.
No doubt, no doubt. So we thank y'all for tuning in. We want to definitely thank our great guests for coming in. One, Jauhar Abraham, and of course, Miss Natalie Hopkinson from Howard University, a professor at Howard University.
A doctor.
So she.
No, you better say it.
Well, I didn't know her to be a doctor.
PhD.
Okay. All right.
She said it.
Yeah.
You said it.
Twice.
Do I need to keep saying it?
No, you said that, Miss.
Oh, do I need to repeat it?
When you say President Obama, when you give them that title.
Okay. All right. Well, we don't want to talk about Obama right now. That's a whole nother argument.
I'm just saying, the title.
That's a whole nother argument.
I go to school for an extra 4, 5, 6 years.
You're going to make my wife call up here on that situation.
If I do for an extra 6 years and go to school to get that title, you're going to give it to me.
Oh, no, trust me. Trust me. Well, I appreciate her coming through and leaving Howard to come up here to do this interview and then have to rush back. So and this gentleman as well. So thank you for tuning in. We appreciate y'all for tuning in to the GoWin Radio Show this Thursday. this Thursday, we have our friend, me and Miss Lady's friend, everybody's our friend. You know, Miss Camise Lee and her new group is coming in. I forgot the name of the group. You remember? No. Okay. Well, we're gonna be posting it up. We're gonna be posting it up real soon. Right after we put up this YouTube from this show, because I already know people gonna be looking for this one right here. You know. So, but we're gonna put up the post. Miss Camise Lee. Some of you know her as Songbird. She'll be in here with her brand new group that she's participating in this Thursday, and we probably gonna have a couple other surprises too. So keep it locked right here on GoGo.
Inspired Soul.
Thank you, Inspired Soul. So and don't be mad at me, sis. Hey, bring that mac and cheese. If you know what, call me if you want to get down like that. Call me. You know what I'm saying? So we can knuckle up and do that. Yeah. So. We appreciate y'all for tuning in right here to the GoWin Radio Show on GoGo Radio Live, Windy C Radio, all wrapped up in GoWin.media. Coming to you live from the shops at Iverson. So keep it locked here each and every Tuesday and Thursday from 11 a.m. to, who knows when we get off the air now.
Whenever.
Yeah.
Whenever.
Oh, that used to be my joint. You know that was my joint. You and Songbird used to kill that. Yes, indeed. So you want to get us up out of here, sis?
If you know exactly what I want to do, yeah, then I'ma get a business to you. Cause we just gave you the business.
Peace out. We gonna get that redone, though. Just like I had Chuck Classic redo these joints.
I saw you, so I felt the urge. You know I can't do nothing without this one right here, though. Special education going out to GoGoRadio.com. Go, the Go-Go LHS. Yeah. This is Stormy Saturday. Also Miss Tracy, special request. Pick out your afro, put on your high heel shoes, put on your fancy clothes, you're headed to the go-go. Forget about your 9 to 5, leave all that stress behind. 'Cause baby, it's Saturday night, you're headed to the go-go.
place I'd rather be. Pick out your afro, on your high heel shoes, on your fine